it was Gymkhana 5, which was the San Francisco. Once we realized that like we could go and shut down a city, I mean, it just opened up such a world of, well, now everything feels possible.
When did you realize you had the juice to do that?
And how do you do it?
I look back now at some of the stuff I got to do, and I'm like, it was so cool that I got to do that. It escalated quickly. The first Gymkhana cost $30,000, and then it moved into millions and millions of dollars, like very fast. This was on KenBlockRacing.com, and a month later, Ken gets a phone call from his broadband provider, and they say, "Hey, you had a massive amount of, of website traffic last month. You owe us." He's like, "Well, how much?" $28,000.
Yeah.
What, 28,000? What are you talking about? $28,000. Like, I was like, "Well, what's the web traffic?" He's like, 10 million unique.
Oh. Jesus.
And we're like, "What?" And I said, "Hey, like, have you heard of YouTube? Like where all the cat videos are? Apparently they won't charge us to upload the video there. Like apparently we can upload the video there for free." Something that we don't share often. Ken absolutely hated that car. Every single stunt, I was like, "Oh, he's gonna break the car on this one." Like I think he wanted the car to break.
You're talking about Gymkhanas or any of the other content. What's the one thing that you wanted to do that you never got to?
Aircraft carrier. I always wanted to shoot on an aircraft carrier.
Welcome back. Another episode of Oil and Whiskey. This week, we have none other than Brian Scotto, Hoonigan fame, co-founder, editor, publisher, automotive, I'd say alternative automotive extraordinaire. Because your career has always been in these mainstream yet niches.
Yeah, that's true. Always like mainstream adjacent.
Yeah.
So since the beginning. Yeah. Well, I think that's, when you're a kid from New York City, you don't really get a traditional invite into automotive. So you kind of find a different way in. So it's always been a DIY kind of approach for me. And, it's worked out. I can't complain too much. So how are you guys doing?
Good, man. How about you? Glad you could do this. New York City proper, like actual downtown New York City?
I grew up in Queens, and then I bounced around Queens, Brooklyn, and Manhattan until I left in my early 30s. Yeah. So
wow.
So took the subway to high school. Never had a yellow school bus. Kind of that type of New York City experience, and grew up with at the time it was tokens and Metro cards. Traveling around the city. I think once you're about 12 or 13 years old in New York. So at least back then, it was hard for your parents to prevent you from going anywhere because you just had access to everything. Like if I could take the train to Jamaica, Queens every day, which was a bad neighborhood, to go to school, why can't I also go to Greenwich Village or wherever else? So yeah, it was good fun. So
that's a different way of life. What are your friends and I mean 13, 14, 15-year-old, I guess you don't have. What's the automotive aspirations then? If you don't need a car to transport,
you can't even physically drive a car in the city, right? So how the hell do you get into that?
Yeah, for me, I got just I think like all young boys, I was really just into cars when I was a kid, but for me, I really got into radio controlled cars because it was the one thing that you could do. Obviously at the age, but also could play with in and around where I lived in Queens. But as I got older and I got my driver's license, there was actually a pretty big automotive community in New York, but it's just hidden, right? It's one of those things. I mean, one, there was a massive street racing space in New York, and especially when I was young, it was really big. So cars were always the thing you did at night because traffic and everything was so miserable during the day, right? So you'd spend your day washing your car, working on it, and then the minute the sun goes down, you'd go out and go cruising. And we'd go out to a bunch of the different sort of strips. There was Francis Lewis Boulevard or Franny Lou in Queens, and then Deer Park Avenue out Long Island. Think about it now, it's we would drive an hour just to go cruise up and down DPA as a kid and things like that. So, but no, and I think it was one of those things where now that I lived in Los Angeles, and it's you literally can just trip over car culture wherever you go. kind of take for granted how much more difficult it was in New York at the time. But if you drove past somebody with a cool car, there was a really good chance that you'd like wave at them, pull over the side of the road and start talking because like you didn't see
Oh,
each
yeah.
other as much. But then once you got into the space and there was clubs and all these different things, and I was sort of there right at the beginning of the, sort of the internet forums kind of exploding, and that made it a lot easier to do meets and kind of go to all that stuff. But actually all of my childhood friends were not into cars. So like for me, I was really the only, I mean, they were, but on the outside, like they weren't like buying cars and spending their weekends taking them apart and working on them and stuff like that. So like my core group of friends were into normal city stuff, which was drinking, writing graffiti, getting in trouble. Like for me, I got, the cars was the other side of that. And a lot of that actually came from riding BMX bikes. I was huge into riding BMX as a kid. And riding BMX meant that you wanted to go other places, to go to skate parks, to go ride dirt jumps or do whatever. So having a car and being able to put your bike on a car and, and go somewhere was sort of that initial thing for me. It was like seeing some of the older guys with like slammed Volkswagens with roof racks I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And, with age comes the cage. So as I got older, I was like, oh, cars make a little more sense. So
Dude, the BMX thing comes up a lot. I feel like
Does.
the two things that always come up that somehow leads to being a car enthusiast is BMX bikes and for whatever reason ADD. It's
Yeah,
like if,
a lot of
if you
ADD.
go back through the podcast, you listen to like I was like into BMX bikes and like massive ADD and stuff. So like here I am.
yeah, I live right in the middle of that intersection. So
And a massive love for school usually is.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Fuck school.
Bunch
That
of,
didn't work out.
bunch
for
of
me.
great students on this podcast. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
what's your? You mentioned forums. In that day, what is that? Is that Yellow Bullet? I mean, what's the forums?
I was really into Volkswagens as a kid, so it was VW Vortex.
Okay.
VW Vortex was like the home for for all the Volkswagen guys, and still to this point, it's like I'll meet people who are in the Volkswagen community or where, and I'll be like, oh, what was your username? Like we still weirdly connect on that. So, but yeah, I mean that was it. I mean, I remember Yellow Bullet. I remember a bunch of the other ones back in the day. But I don't know. That was like the initial place, and there was the car lounge on VW Vortex, which like for me was sort of the was like the entry point to other cars. Like I was one of those Volkswagen kids who could argue why Volkswagen is better than anything. Like oh no, like front wheel drive, 180 horsepower, just destroys a Ferrari.
Power to
F40.
weight. Power
Let
to
me
weight,
explain
bro.
to you why.
It destroys the 458.
Yeah, just whatever. It doesn't matter, And I was certainly that person. And then the car lounge, which was sort of a board inside of the bigger Vortex forum, was about all cars that weren't Volkswagens. And I think that's where like I started to get a lot more exposure there. And and this is in my like late teens, early 20s, and and then I got a job at a automotive magazine, and that kind of really expanded my look at cars and kind of was like, oh, maybe Volkswagens aren't as great as I thought they were. So, but they're still a lot of fun. So,
Magazine wise, you had what? Super Street and Max Power, that right? Max Power is obviously way more VW stuff. But
Hot VWs.
yeah,
you had hot VW.
yeah. So
that was air though.
So I grew up on the water cooled side. So Performance VW was a British magazine. Max Power was a British mag that I loved, and and quite honestly, Max Power was one of those magazines that I would look at and say that's one of the reasons I got into the automotive industry. Like Max Power felt so punk rock and DIY. It was so the opposite of Super Street. I liked Super Street, but I wasn't really a Honda kid. So I still read it because there wasn't that much other stuff to read. And I really liked Sport Compact Car, Dave Coleman. Like there was a lot of kind of like learning about how cars work and how suspension works. I enjoyed that part, especially because I went to school for engineering. I always liked that side of it all. So like getting to sort of understand all of that was really cool. I liked Grassroots Motorsports. I liked Hot Rod, even though when I was younger, I didn't really like American cars till I moved to California. But I enjoyed, I just enjoyed the customization side of it, right? I even, as a New Yorker, I even read Lowrider magazine, which was so crazy because like I know now you might see lowriders in New York, but there were no lowriders in New York in the late 90s. That was just such a West Coast culture. It felt so foreign to me, but it was so cool to see like people chrome plate something and then engrave it to the point that it felt like a piece of art, and meanwhile all it was like
Dude,
a lower control arm.
It's so bad. I think that still is like the biggest sleeper in the car industry, car culture in general. Like
they don't get the mainstream
notoriety,
credit
but
that they should.
Holy shit! I mean, I was always inspired by lowriders. Like as a kid, I thought they were so fucking badass. I've never driven one. I can imagine it's not much to drive, but hell of a cool.
It's fun.
The paint, the hand
labor
engraving,
hours in the paint has got to be insane.
it's nuts.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. I don't think I've ever felt more badass than driving around in a lowrider. Like, there's just something super cool about it. And I've driven some really badass pieces of machinery, and there's just something about a lowrider just like cruising at 10 miles an hour, like, on three wheels, which is super rad. I live in Long Beach now, so I went from never seeing lowriders
All you
to
see.
like driving around with my son, and my son's like, "Hey, Dad, it's a lowrider. Hey, Dad, it's a lowrider," because they're just like all over the place in Long Beach.
Dude, me rolling around here in the north suburbs of Chicago, 5'6", like bald dude.
Yeah.
Man, would I be
Man, it'd be badass.
Just three wheeling that thing, listening to like George Strait or something cool.
That's one day it'll happen.
Yeah.
You're right though. Hopping back, but talked about max power. There was something. It was so much cooler because it wasn't unfiltered. Like a little logo for a Dutch company or something like that. You're like, oh, that's just more badass. So, as good as Super Street was, it was filtered. It was an Americanized version of what everybody was doing in Japan. And then Sport Compact Car was like an older. I was never a Sport Compact Car magazine fan. Like it was a car and driver version, like SCCA. Like it's an older guy that's gotten into Hondas, and you're like, oh, that's kind of weird. Like it's.
Older
It definitely was lacking the culture side. For sure.
It didn't have. It was you had 0 to 60 times and like little. It's just like it don't make something fucking cool. It was never about style or looks really. Everything was performance based, but they were you should only lower it 0.3 inches instead of 2 inches because of the
to prevent tire rub.
Shut the fuck up. It doesn't look near as cool.
Lower that bitch until the tires are scrubbing.
Yeah. But yeah, the max power thing was, it was a larger, right? It was so larger format, and it stuck out on the newsstand. It was always, punk rock. You just had, even seeing like, most of it was festivals, and for car shows there, it was all festival stuff. And you're like, it's just a peek into a world of like, that's so fucking awesome.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that was, like I said, it was one of the things that led me to want to work in car mags and work in the car industry. And then, like, I later got to meet all the guys who were from the Max Power era. I had Andrew Tipping, who was known as Fly, the photographer who shot most of Max Power. I had this one night with him at SEMA where I think it was the first time I ever met him, and I was at Rides magazine at the time. We met at the Hard Rock Hotel. We were sitting at the old Circle Bar. And he just looked over at me and he's like, "You know what Americans suck at?" I was like, "What?" It's like drinking. So fast forward about 14 hours later, the both of us woke up in a bush at like 8 o'clock in the morning. I don't know how we got there. Apparently we got kicked out of like 2 different clubs, and me and him both fell asleep at like 3 blocks from the convention center, and then just like wiped the leaves off of us and went to the show that day. So yeah, apparently we both sucked at it in the end, but it was a good time.
Stayed in the saddle for a long time.
Back in the heyday of print media, when the magazines were rocking, Circle Bar at the Hard Rock during SEMA was a place to be. Yeah,
it was the go-to. Yeah, for sure. Circle Bar was always kind of good, but for SEMA, that was where everybody ended up at the end of the night. So it was always that one more chance for a crazy night, right? You already went out, you went to this party, you went to that party, and then we would always stay at the Hard Rock when I was at Rides, and we came in, and and you're like, oh, let me just go have one drink, 2 drinks. Next thing you know, the sun's up. So and you're like, you do back to the convention center.
Remember Mike Robledo, right? Yeah. So he was at Super Street back in the day, right? Blue hair, smoked cloves, and we had one of those similar nights at the Circle Bar where it was, just drinking and, saw the sun come up, and He was a different guy
Yeah,
back
always.
Yeah, he cleaned up a lot.
then. Yeah,
He started walking that one back midway through the story.
He's grown up. Yeah, that was.
Yeah,
I forgot he's
think
got a
lot
full
of
blown
SEMA
career.
Stories, yeah, you're like, oh, I probably shouldn't mention that part. Just skip to the end.
Yeah, and then yada yada yada. The sun comes up.
Yada yada yada. We ended up there. We paid some bail, and yeah, whatever.
You know how it goes. It's
Expunged.
fucking SEMA. It's crazy.
Yada yada
We've all
yada.
been there.
Expunged.
So what brings you to the West Coast? You said you're around 30 years old. So I mean, you got out of school. You worked some jobs.
Yeah, so I actually started in the culture side of the magazine world, not automotive. I loved cars, it was my hobby. I just didn't know you could actually work in your hobby. That just seemed like too good to be true. So I worked in a bunch of sort of New York culture magazines. One of them was this magazine, Mass Appeal, and then later on I actually started writing for a bunch of different magazines, everything from like Vibe magazine to um, like Double XL and all these mags, because none of the writers there knew how to drive stick. And none of them really knew much about cars. So they get invited to like a press junket because at the time, right, like the magazines are living off of car ads, right? Car ads are the number one, spender in the space. They're what are, basically handling from cover to TOC, right? The most valuable part of the mag. And those automakers obviously want them to talk about their cars in the editorial side. And, they would send these writers who knew nothing about cars and show up to like a track event at Laguna and like not even be able to like tie together a lap. So I started to become that guy who would go and write under all these fake names because I was writing for 6 or 7 different publications because, I'd grown up and was around New York and the hip hop community. So I could sort of write in their tone and voice. But I knew how to drive a car. So that sort of led to my job at Rides magazine, and Rides was a hip hop car culture mag, so very much like Dub magazine. Reality is Rides was actually bigger on the newsstand, but Dub just had more presence because of the car show. I think the car show really set them in a different place in the space. But Rides had this pretty massive readership. Actually, at one point, I think we were larger than any of the Buff books, so bigger than Motor Track, Car and Driver on the newsstand. Right now, we didn't sell, obviously subscription wise, like every single dentist in America was getting Motor Trend. So no knock, but but that sort of was the model, and I wasn't really very into customized cars on big 22-inch wheels, but I was living in New York and I took the job that was available to me, and it got me access to cars. And and then from there I launched 060 magazine, which was a magazine that was more true to me, kind of performance car mag. And I also got to do this side project on Dunk magazine, which was basically the magazine that brought donks to the mainstream. And that was actually a ton of fun, because while I wasn't as interested in what rapper was standing in front of a car that they rented from someone they didn't even own for a magazine cover, I was sort of into this emerging culture of like taking old box Chevys and doing all this crazy stuff to them, because I was always the kind of person who preferred taking a basic car and making it cool than taking a cool car and modifying it. So I just was just all about that and really sort of loved that.
How did that even happen? Because I honestly, I didn't know that until today. I was doing a little bit of research and I saw it today, and that was one thing that jumped. I was like, oh, I got to bring that up, because
that's your sweet spot, dude. You thrive in the donk world.
I do. Well, one, I was in the South, right, when it was being created, right? So it was being, well, the first time you see a print media, right? You see something that says donk, boxes, and bubbles, right? You're actually like, they hit it. One, it's an actual magazine. Number two, it's like, it's a thing, right? So it was crazy. And I remember customers coming in with those magazines like this right there. And it's like, well, that's a 76 Caprice, right? You've got a Geo Metro, right? So we're gonna have to scale some things down. We can get it up, right? And we can
15s,
right? So we can get some oversized wheels, but we're not gonna get it to sit like that. But it's a culture that unfortunately you guys never got to experience, and it's wildly different now. I mean, it's amazing to see what those guys are doing with it now, especially in the performance side. But at the beginning of it, it was a wild wild thing.
Yeah, so the background on it, when we were doing rides, there was this back of the magazine 2-page spread called From the Streets. And they would always just profile either like a car club or someone's personal car. And, having been someone who grew up liking Max Power and Super Straight, I really felt like that community lacked that type of magazine, right? Like both Dub and Rides were so focused on the celebrity driver of this. And to be honest, most of the celebrities didn't really have super cool cars. A few of the guys did, right? Like Manny Fresh, Wyclef, but even their cars weren't as crazy modified as like your average guy who's been 3-4 years building a car just to make it personally theirs. And we're starting to see more and more of these cars showing up to all the events, right? Whether it's the Dub shows or whatever. And, it was like, all right, let's start doing more and more From the Street. So I was really kind of driving on this idea of like, I would love to do even a special issue called From the Streets. So we were just searching for more and more of what was out there. And a photographer in Miami sent me a shoot. And it was the first time I had ever seen anything like this. Because at this point, like hip hop car culture is mostly like Escalades, right? It's still like newer, nicer cars, right? Mercedes,
Yep.
things like that. That's really what the culture was. So what you're getting is you're getting an Escalade, $60,000-$70,000 with like an LV interior, another $20,000-$30,000, another expensive set of wheels, 10 grand. So you're talking like the entry point to belong to this community was 100 grand. Right. I mean, that just, if you didn't have something like that, we really weren't talking about it. And now all of a sudden there's guys driving around, which at the time really felt like the unloved cars, right? Like, let's be honest, like we may have a different way of looking at them now, but I don't think anyone was sitting there going, ooh, look at that 1988 box Chevy.
Nope.
Like the box Chevy was your grandma's car, that like got handed down to you,
And everybody's
look,
grandma had one. They were so easy to get. Everybody's grandma had one.
Exactly. And it was, oh, sure, the Impala SS was cool, right, for the bubble era. And, there was obviously the SS eras and, SSs and that type of stuff. But in general, they weren't really well loved. And here was this group of people who were taking these cars and making them into something that, was comic book level proportions, right? So the early cars weren't on, 28s, 30s yet. You're mostly dealing with 22s, 24s. They were jacked up. All of them were done differently. Some of them, they would just stick like risers in. I mean, some of them were done the way you would lift like an old like Ford truck, where you would just build this like whole new subframe for it. And it looked horrible. You've got like trailing arms and all this kind of stuff.
You got body lifts. You got reverse Z'd frames.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, and each one of them was sketchier than the next, right? I remember the first time getting to drive one. I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but someone threw me the keys to drive one, and I have never been more terrified in a vehicle because every time we would hit like a small little pothole, it would change 2 lanes. Yeah, it would just be all over the place. Like you'd get wheel hop, death wobble, like all of the possible issues you can have with suspension. You get them all at the same time.
Stock brakes, stock lug nuts, stock axles, stock ball joints, stock.
You get like a quarter,
yeah,
quarter inch of
and not just
engagement on the
stock.
lug.
Not just stock, but original. Like those have been in there since 1977. Right?
I've always wondered what the driving experience is like on some of the early ones. Granted, the new stuff, guys, there's like full blown. I mean, we build chassis for them, but man, I can't imagine how horrific it must.
No
be.
joke. No joke. Yeah. Anybody that's listening right now that grew up around the same area that is still friends to this day remembers in Birmingham, right? The Monday morning after there's 2 big events, right? You had Freaknik in Atlanta, but then in Birmingham you've got the HBCU Magic City Classic, right? So you've got the big football turn. So you got Magic City Classic. So Magic City Classic weekend, short of tax refund weekend at the rim shop, was our biggest, the biggest, right? So we were blowing stuff out. Well, the Monday morning after Magic City Classic on the interstate, right through town, it's literally like, it would be like a post-apocalyptic wasteland of donks and donk parts. that didn't make it.
Oh, okay.
A wheel and
axle.
wheel and axle
With control arms, like the whole
wheel
assembly.
and I'm not lying. It was all the time, and that's really what I mean. We had Donkmaster on. We started talking about that. You had a lot of municipalities really start cracking down because of wheels and parts would just go flying out. That's when they started making them better. But literally, it was crazy.
It's kind of like what squat trucks are today, right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so obviously we get sent these photos, and I think the thing that really stood out the most was just this like kaleidoscope of colors, right? So you like bright orange, bright green, bright yellow, like all this kind of like wild colors and crazy paint jobs. And that was like right around, there was I think maybe one or two themed ones, right? Where it's like Skittles on the side.
Newport.
Yeah,
Marlboro.
yeah, Skittles, Newport, Yoo-Hoo, Mr. Goodbar, Fruit Loops, Hawaiian Punch was a big one. And it's funny because every city would like have their Hawaiian Punch.
Yeah.
So you'd be like, no, that's the Tampa Hawaiian Punch. Like, no, that's the whatever. So
And NASCAR racing jackets. You had the racing jackets that matched your livery.
yeah, the DuPont jacket was big back then. So, but yeah, so we get sent this photos, and by the way, like just putting a place and time. This is not digital era yet. So, like when I say sent photos, like I'm literally being sent slides that I'm looking at through a loop, right? Because like while we're converting everything to digital to lay it out, the cameras really aren't at that point yet in whatever 2005 2006 when this is all happening. So I'm literally opening up a manila envelope, pulling out a bunch of contact sheets and slides and looking through all this stuff. And I remember just going and getting everyone from the magazine like, yo, you guys got to see this stuff, this is crazy. And we do the layout, and the photography was also really really nice. And we did the layout, and I just leaned over to my graphic designer at the time, and I said at Rise Magazine, I said, hey, just for shits and giggles, lay one out as a cover. Just lay one out as a cover. He's like, all right, what do you want on the cover? Donks, boxes, and bubbles. Just write that. Just write donks, boxes, and bubbles, and put one on the cover. And I think it was Carl Krantz's car was the one that was on the cover, and it was like this auburn orange on massive wheels. He later on did 30-inch clear wheels. They were just a piece of plexiglass, so you could see through them. It was pretty sick. But he would like do donuts in that thing and burn it out. So I think it was a pretty wild rig. But so we laid it out, and while we were like, that unfortunate seating position. This was a Harris publication. Harris did a bunch of different magazines, very few in the automotive space, a lot in the music space, Revolver, Double XL, King, so on and so on. And this one art director's chair was sort of so that everyone could see them when they were walking past. And the publisher walked past, and he was like, "What the fuck? What is this? What are you guys doing? What the fuck is this?" Because he saw the mock-up, right? And so I didn't even get a chance to go sell it. All of a sudden, I think someone, texted me on my BlackBerry and said, hey man, you better get over here. Like Dennis is here looking at the cover you had mocked up. And I'm like, oh shit, because I'm thinking like how I'm going to set this up, and now I'm going to try to explain to him. I think we should try this out or something. And I walk over, and it's like him, Dayton Thomas, who at the time was editor-in-chief of the magazine. I was I think executive editor, but I was basically running the mag at that point because he was running King. And I walked over. I'm thinking I'm going to be in trouble. Like, what are you trying to do here? And they were like, you think this will work? I was like, I do. I was like, I don't know how far it'll work, but like at least we could do Florida, right? Because at this point, we didn't know the cars existed outside of Florida.
Yeah.
So it was like, at least we could do Florida. And again, I want to date this. Like it's mid 2000s. Like we don't have Instagram. We don't have Facebook groups. Like it's very hard to see something that lives in the niche community.
You got
right?
MySpace.
It's not just,
you got MySpace.
Yeah, it's not, right. It's not just showing up in your feed, right? Like you have to go find it. Like we later found out that there was a message forum called East Coast Riders. And there was a group of people who were already aware of this, but it wasn't bleeding past, who they were talking to. And anyway, long story short, we decided to do a test cover, and we did basically the entire South was the From the Streets cover instead. and the sell-through was massive. It sold better than any celebrity we had ever had on the cover. And we realized, wow, there's something going on here. And not only that, but all of a sudden we were getting phone calls and like, mail from all these shops saying, hey, I built one of these for this guy. Hey, like I know a few of these. There's a few here, there's a few there. And we said, all right, let's go do a special edition of Ride. It's called Donk Box and Bubble. And the first trip was North Carolina, South Carolina, and Miami. And then the second trip, we went to Indianapolis, North Chicago, like where else were we? Detroit. Like, and this was the one that blew me away because to me it was a Southern thing. Like I really saw it as a Southern thing. And next thing you know, like we're in Chicago and finding some of the coolest donks that we'd ever seen. And they'd been built for 2 or 3 years. They were just like hiding. And that was always the coolest part of like that experience was, in some ways I felt like we were like discovering this thing. And now look, there was a community that was well aware it was existing, but no one was talking about it outside, especially like when you're in New York, it's like, oh, West Coast is lowriders. Like, we've got this. And the South and the Midwest were kind of forgotten in the culture. And which is interesting because at the time, the music like hip hop was bigger in the Midwest and the South than it was East Coast and West Coast, but there was still this East Coast, West Coast kind of idea on cars. And anyway, long story short, that magazine continued to go on. I was heavily involved in the first 3 or 4 issues, and we would go out on the road for 3 weeks at a time and just go from town to town to town. And I have to admit, one of my biggest regrets is that we didn't capture more of the lifestyle when we were there. Because when we were there, we were kind of like just shooting cars and moving through it and getting through it. But like we got such crazy access to such incredible sort of like moments and weird things. And just like we did this one shoot with this girl. So this dude shows up. We never wanted to put girls in the magazine. Like we wanted to stay away from that for multiple reasons, but one was like King magazine was where the girls were, and that was like related to rides. So it's like we weren't trying to make rides about that. Plus, there was a lot of advertisers that didn't want scantily clad girls in the magazine, right? That we knew we would turn them off, General Motors, things like that. So it was like it was always like keep the girls out. That was lowriders thing. That wasn't going to be our thing to have models in front of the cars. But that doesn't matter when you go to shoot a car. Every dude's like, "Yo, so I got this girl. She'll pose naked in front of the car," and you're trying to explain to him like why. Like, no, we don't do that. That's okay.
Shots, like,
we'll see if they work.
Dude, that's so we would do the whole shoot, and they'd be like, "All right, we're ready for her," and we'd have the girl jump in, and then it would never actually make it into the magazine, right? But we went to do this one shoot, and it was I think it was for Mr. Scrape and that shop, and we were in a cemetery shooting this. I want to say it was a Monte Carlo, like it wasn't even a dunk, and the guy who owned it was just so aggressively persuasive on you need to shoot with this girl. And he like drags this girl, and this girl doesn't even look like she wants to be there. Like the whole thing was like kind of super uncomfortable. We're in a cemetery, like people are burying their loved ones next to us, and we've got this girl half naked, and she turns around, and this dude just turns to me and goes, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, she a bullet hole bitch." And literally, she had 3 bullet holes in her. And I was like, "Oh,
dude, like fresh ones or just scars?"
No, like scars,
Okay.
Scars. And it was just. And it was just one of these, like, you can't make this up. This is such just a crazy, crazy, crazy experience. And, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. Got to like meet some really cool people. And, late, I don't think I entered that thinking to myself, I want to build a donk, right? Like I'm Euro car guy, like super clean, nuanced details. I've got the lip spoiler from a South African car in my car, like the kind of things no one knows. And I'm looking at these things and they were just so wild, and it really stuck with me. And later on we built one at Hoonigan. As sort of dunks kind of I think had their like second like coming or their second chapter. And what brought that was the performance side. Because the early cars didn't really have much performance. So you'd be lucky if you found a big block car. most of them were just 350s. They were usually either like kind of just basically rebuilt 350s. Maybe you'd get a crate engine, but like no one had it. There was nothing of like big power in the cars. The cars could barely kind of hold themselves together, I think, just
Yeah.
driving. Everyone was still trying to figure out the suspension in that era. But there was a ton of money being put into interiors, paint, all of that kind of stuff. And, and some of them were ridiculous and gaudy, and some of them were actually really rad. Like there were some where you're like, man, the style on this thing's really cool. And then like, these guys did the Phantom Donk, which was Spade. I can't really remember all these names, but yeah, Spade Performance or Spade, whatever.
Yeah.
They did a 70, maybe a 74, 75, I forget. And they took like the front end of a Phantom and kind of like grafted and built that all in. So I mean, people were just doing crazy stuff. And it was a fun kind of spectacle at the time. Yeah. And I have to say, like, part of it was like, I agreed to do the magazine because I really wanted to do 0 to 60. I kind of, in hindsight, wish those two things in my life didn't overlap. I was so focused on 0 to 60. I put so much attention to that I wish I could like have gone back and gotten to enjoy sort of the stuff with Donk instead of like every single Donk shoot being a 14-hour day that may or may not have been outside of a liquor store there was a shootout in, which actually happened to us once in Opelika while we were there. As soon as we heard the gunshots, my photographer Tony Harmer, one of my best friends, literally just picked up both light stands, threw them in the minivan, lit a cigarette, got in the passenger seat, and he was like, "We're leaving." I was like, I think it's over. I think we can finish the shoot. He's like, "We're leaving."
Yeah, you're all good.
But it was an interesting and fun sort of experience, and then and it was actually really fun, to fast forward a decade plus when Hoonigan, built the car and we got connected with Donkmaster and started going to some of the Donk events. Like it was really cool to see the evolution of kind of where it went because, I'm Donks were these things that I learned to sort of love and respect because I got to be near them. But I think most of car culture just saw them as something to make fun of.
Yeah.
And they stopped making fun of them when Donk started running nines.
Oh, yeah.
Like that changed the whole conversation when all of a sudden like Donks were like beating, Corvettes and Hellcats and all of that kind of stuff. So it was cool to kind of see it get that evolution. But yeah, anyway, I'm tangenting from there. I did 0 to 60 magazine during that whole spell. I met Ken Block, and that was my impetus to move to California because he said, "Hey, I want to start a car brand, and I want to do this thing." And that's what that eventually became, Hoonigan. And I wanted to run it from New York City, and he just said to me, like, "There's no car culture in New York. Like, you need to move to California. It's going to be so much easier." And I'm like, "All right, I'll move to California for 2 years. I'll get things set up, and I'll move back home." It's been 13 or 14 years since I did that, and
Now it's home.
there is a good car culture here despite all of our laws. It's still pretty damn good, so it's kind of kept me here. Yeah.
How'd you meet Ken in the first place? Was that through advertisement with the magazines?
It was actually through Rides magazine. I was trying to bring in more than just sort of the classic kind of rappers or athletes on the cover, and the Gumball Rally was pretty big in the early 2000s, and I mean I think it was like really big. I mean I feel like everyone was talking about how cool this concept of the Gumball Rally was, and I'd gotten wind that Rob Dyrdek, who was a pro skateboarder at the time before his MTV fame, was going to go do Gumball, and I reached out to DC Shoes. I had a contact there, and I said, hey, it would be great if when we got back, we could get a few photos from the trip if you're sending a photographer, and we would love for to be able to interview Rob about his time there. And it was going to be like 4-inch by 3-inch thing in the front of the book, but it was starting to kind of introduce celebrity to the whole instead of it being so focused on hip hop, trying to kind of broaden that space. And I got a phone call back from the DC people about like an hour later, and they said, "Hey, the head of DC said that there's room in his car if you want to come along." And I'm like, "Well, don't they leave tomorrow?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I went to my publisher and I was like, "Can I fly to London and go join this thing? I think we can make a whole feature out of it." And all they cared about was like well, do you think DC Shoes will advertise? Right? Like I was like, maybe
Yeah,
they'll
for
advertise in
sure,
the
dude.
future.
Absolutely.
That was it. I was like, yeah, I definitely think they will. I definitely
Yeah,
think
I
they
got a
will.
week to talk
And
him into it.
yeah, and I was just told that there wasn't that much room in the car, and I literally had a backpack, and I flew to London. I got on a flight that night. I flew to London, met them in Trafalgar Square. I'm 6'8", which no one warned them about, and I got in the back of Ken's 2004 STI and or 2005 STI, and they had three matching STIs that year. Ken's was white. They were all camouflage. Ken's was white. There was a blue on blue one that Rob had, and then Damon, who was Ken's co-founder at DC, he had a black one. And yeah, it was and they were all tuned like, not crazy numbers today, but I think they all made like about 500 horsepower, which was enough to beat up on Lamborghinis on the highway, which was kind of fun because there's nothing better than watching some douche in his Lambo get smoked by an STI. So yeah, it was, and got to spend a bit of time with Ken on that trip. And quite honestly, I didn't really feel like we super connected. Ken was he was either driving and kind of quiet or sleeping. I spent a lot of time talking to Damon and Rob and Big Black and Lucy, Ken's wife. And then at the end of the trip, Ken and I chatted a bit. We were always in the same car for hours on at a time. But at the end of the trip, I said, "Hey, if you ever want to do some like real racing," and he was racing rally at this point. But he's like, if you ever want to do like some real racing versus this like gumball stuff, there's this event in the U.S. Put on by Brock Yates and his son called One Lap of America. We should go do it. And I just kind of threw that out there, got on a plane, flew home. A week later, he's like, "Hey, I want to start planning the trip for One Lap next year." So that was kind of went from there, and we continued to kind of be friendly, and got more and more friendly, and started spending more time traveling out, spending time with him. And he's at this time looking at rally racing and trying to get rally racing to that next level. And he pushed really, really hard, to do that. And it's funny because I was just having this conversation with someone the other day about this moment, and I said, I look back at it now and I forget that in the early days, Ken never really thought about his own celebrity. He was mostly concerned about Travis Pastrana's, right? Because the way he saw it was like he loved rally racing and he didn't see himself as a celebrity. He saw himself as like the guy behind the guy. So everything we were doing in the early days was like, how can we make more people talk about Travis? How can we make more people talk about rally racing? Right. So, that was really where the focus was for him. And, there was a lot of projects I was doing early on that he was, I was still working at 060 and rides and dunk, but I was doing sort of side hustle for him. And most of the stuff was related to DC Shoes, sort of effort in rally racing and everything that they were doing with Travis. And then I think it kind of came to a point where Ken was like, I think maybe it was a bit of like Travis was just doing too much. Like Travis was like also doing double backflips. I mean, Travis is still doing too much. I just saw him the other day. He's always doing too much. But and I think Ken was just so focused on the rally stuff that like Travis couldn't do all these ideas that Ken had. And Ken was like, "I'm going to do some of these." And the first one was that Stunt Junkies jump, where he jumps 171 feet on Discovery Channel. And, that was it was just such an interesting time because, print industry is starting to fall. Television's still pretty big, right? We're sort of on the heel side of like, there's 100 build shows out there at this point. Everyone's trying to make some type of automotive content. Discovery Channel has basically become the car channel. And he does Stunt Junkies, but I helped him sort of take that Stunt Junkies thing and make it matter in sort of the blog world, right? To get everyone on the internet talking about it, to get the forums talking about it, to do all that and help kind of seed and get that out there. And after that, we had a bunch of like smaller little sort of these individual moments. Another one was this thing in Snow Park down in New Zealand, and it was just like one event after another of trying to make these like small moments come together that really were just packaged editorial stories to give to a Jalopnik or an Autoblog or whoever to talk about. And that's how Gymkhana started. Like, because Gymkhana was just another one of those ideas. It was really kind of the third one we had done. I guess third time's a charm. And, that really sort of popped off. And it all really came out of, an unexpected issue, which was there was this Gymkhana USA series that Ken wanted to go compete in that I had told them about. And they ended up shutting down the series. And Ken was like, well, I built this car to go do this. So I guess I'll just go rent the location and we'll go like make a skate video type thing. That's what he knew. But the series was a little slow and not that fun. It was mostly first and second gear. What if it was mostly third and fourth gear, make everything kind of bigger, bring in a little bit more, theatrics to the whole thing. And that's why the first film was called, Gymkhana Practice, because it was all about practicing for a series that had gone defunct. And again, when we made that, there was like I don't think the word views existed in our brain. Like that just was not there yet.
You're just
It's
making a cool video.
Yeah, we're making a cool video hoping that all the blogs would talk about it. And when the video first came out, 1 week later, every blog, every magazine, like all of the forums had all talked about it. And we were like, huge success. This was really great. Loved it, like totally did what they were supposed to do. And you have to go back and watch the video. The opening screen says, as seen in 0 to 60 magazine, because to us, it was the supplement to the print, and print was God. This was just the like thing on the side was we made this little video. Maybe some people would go watch, right?
Changing of the guards there.
Yeah, and then as the story goes, a month later, this was on kenblockracing.com, and a month later, Ken gets a phone call from his broadband provider, and they say, "Hey, you had a massive amount of, of website traffic last month, and you owe us." He's like, "Well, how much?" $28,000.
Yeah.
What 28,000? What are you talking about? $28,000. Like, and Ken he had already sold his company. He was doing well, but he wasn't like the just go throw away $28,000 kind of guy. And Ken called me and said, "Hey man, like, do you think 0 to 60 could put this on their website? Because this just cost us $28,000 in broadband. It's like it's on my own personal site." And I'm like, "Well, how many people came to watch it?" Like, he's like, "I had no ads on it. I didn't make any money off of this. No banner ads."
This is before
Yeah,
you could
like,
actually get paid for people coming to your site, right?
Yeah. Well, you could, but like none of it was set up, right? And he said, I was like, "Well, what's the web traffic?" And he's like, 10 million unique.
Oh. Jesus.
And we're like, "What?" This is like in a month or two. We're like, "Wait, 10 million unique visitors?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Holy shit." So I go to my publishers and they're like, "No fucking way," because like we don't sell enough ads online to offset the viewership. Like we don't want to be in the hole in it. And I like did some research and I went to Ken and I said, "Hey, like, have you heard of YouTube? Like where all the cat videos are? Apparently they won't charge us to upload the video there. Like apparently we can upload the video there for free."
That is crazy. The way
Not realizing on that later on in my life, I'd be in fights with YouTube to pay us more money to put videos on YouTube. But I was like, yeah, I can't believe they'll let us put it up for free. So then we uploaded it for free, and it, went on to do another 16 or 18 million additional views on YouTube at that point. And our lives were changed. I mean, everything kind of changed after that moment because we realized, I think we realized a lot of things. And at the time, we realized that this formula works and there's probably people who are willing to pay for it. But later on, I think what we realized, and it's really what helped, spawn the concept for Hoonigan, was that there was this like quiet, more like this silent audience that no one was talking about, right? That everyone at the time, Wall Street Journal ran this article, kids aren't getting their driver's license, no one cares about cars anymore, it's all over, everybody wants a fucking Prius. And we're sitting there going, we've got numbers to say something otherwise. They just don't want cars the way they were being given cars. Like, this is what needs to change. They're just not reading magazines anymore or watching Discovery Channel. Like, there's a new audience and they're there and they're coming from video games. They're coming from skateboarding. They're coming from snowboarding and BMX. And this is this new audience. How do we go talk to them? And that was really, that was sort of the pieces that put together the idea that, yes, we could go do Hoonigan. And on top of that, DC was selling merchandise connected to the Gymkhana films, and it was becoming the number one selling product for a skateboard company, which like they were not happy about. Like they were happy about the money side of it,
Yeah.
but they weren't happy that the number one selling shirt that year was a Ken Block t-shirt. Like this is not how this is supposed to work. Ken was the business guy and really the marketing guy at DC, and skateboarders were supposed to be the heroes, not Ken, it's interesting because they decided to kind of step away from it because they thought this is only going to be a trend that's going to last a year or two. We don't want to sink this brand that's got, a decade plus history. And by chasing a trend in automotive, like we are at the core an action sports company, this is not action sports. And that gave us the opportunity to say, okay, let's go do our own thing. That's basically a DC shoes, type of brand for our community. And that was how sort of Hoonigan birthed, because it did birth as a clothing company, but we quickly, moved into media to support the clothing. And then all of a sudden it became a media company. And then we couldn't figure out how to make money at being a media company. We were a clothing company again. It's funny how those things turn around.
It sounds like, I mean, if I'm hearing correct, this entire thing just happened organically. It doesn't seem like you and Ken never sat down at any point or like, we're going to do this, and this, and grow this brand and do this. It's like these things all seem like they just randomly happened and fucking exploded. And then you reacted to like the next and just kept growing it, and growing it, and growing it.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a lot of like reaction to things as they were happening. There was also, I mean, so much of it is being at the right place at the right time, right? So like a few things that happened for us during the launch of the brand that was, very unique was one, the introduction of YouTube, right, as this video place and this is before modern YouTube, right? Like modern YouTube is all about the creator. This was viral YouTube. Like, can you make something that'll do 10 million plus views? Like all the people we were talking to in year one, no one else was automotive, but everybody else, in sort of that same space we were in, were doing these massive 10, 20, 30, 40 million view videos. Like that's what you went to YouTube for, was to try to get virality out of it. And then we were there when we launched. Ken's racing team was the same year that Facebook opened up pages for brands. Because before that, Facebook was just originally it was a college peer-to-peer thing, and then became kind of more like a Friendster version of that. And then all of a sudden they allowed brands on, and we were there early as the Ken Block brand, and then later on the Hoonigan brand. And then a year after Hoonigan launched, Instagram started, and we were there so early that most people still thought Instagram was just a filter app called Hipstermatic. Like people didn't understand the difference early on. Like it was still felt like filters, right? And people didn't realize it was its own platform. And we were there early on, and and then we were always trying to be there early on. I think that's what our goal was, and and then when YouTube shifted, we weren't there. There was a lot of people there before us, Roadkill, Mighty Car Mods, a bunch of people were doing it, but we kind of came in with a brutality of like, oh, you guys are doing that once a week, that's cute. We're gonna do this every day. Oh, you know what? We're gonna do it twice a day. And at some point, one point we were putting out 14 pieces of content a week, which I now apologize to everybody else on YouTube because we certainly raised the bar of what people were expecting to create. But it was this idea of like, oh, we're a year or two late to the YouTube space. Drive had already done their thing, Network A. We were helping with the Network A stuff, and a lot of the Drive guys were all old 0 to 60 guys or connected to 0 to 60. But we went in and we kind of, just, I think it was about, a sequence of things, but it was also like every time we got into something, we gave it our all. And we're like, really like, okay, let's take this really seriously. Like, let's really, really go after this, right? Like everyone else was looking at Instagram as this thing they had to do. Like, oh, we got to make sure we do this, where we're having 3-hour meetings about what we're posting, right? Like when we decided we were going to do it, it was very kind of surgical on what we were doing. And, I think one of the things that's often wasn't seen from the outside looking in was that we were very data driven as to like what's working, what's not working. Where because if you watch Hoonigan, you're like, how did these fucking idiots figure out how to do this stuff, right? But that was very much the perception versus the reality model, right? Of like, there was a lot of hard work kind of put into it. I know everyone thinks all we did was do donuts in the parking lot. Donuts were unfortunately kind of only when the cameras were on. The rest of it was figuring out what was working, and and how do we keep doing it, right? Vinny, I was talking to Vinny the other day, and he was talking about just being sour about everything with Hoonigan, and I was like, it's funny sometimes. I was like, you seem like it's an issue for you more so than a lot of the rest of us. And he's like, it was such a good moment in our lives when it was perfect, like when it was all just working. He's like, and I really just wish I could go back to that.
But everybody,
like it was
everybody
so
wishes for that
good
shit.
in this one moment,
Anything
Yeah.
great that
No.
seems to like
But life,
be the way it goes.
life
right?
is not about 30 years of perfect moments. It's
I know.
It's looking back on the perfect moments that you've had and hoping you have a few more.
Someone said this to me the other day: success is not linear. And I think happiness isn't linear either. You kind of have these different moments. And when I was doing Hoonigan, I spent most of the time regretting that I didn't enjoy 0 to 60 more. Because I was 0 to 60 for me, very, I failed out of college. Like, I didn't, all my other friends were way more successful. All my other friends went to college. None of the kids I grew up with went to college, but all of my friends who I went to school with, you know, had these jobs out of school and were doing well, and like, we're living in apartments by themselves. And I'm like still got like multiple roommates. Like, nothing was felt like it was really working out for me. And so when like 0 to 60 actually hit, it was this like, a mix of imposter syndrome and everything else hit. And I was like, I will work an 18-hour day every day to make sure that this thing matters, right? And I will put, if everyone else is smarter than me, or got a step ahead of me, or did all these other things, I will make up for it in time, right? Like, I will just put the time in, as much time as I possibly can. And in doing so, while some of it I think came across, I think I kind of stopped enjoying it. Like I look
Yeah.
back now at some of the stuff I got to do, and I'm like, it was so cool that I got to do that. And it was like on and over, and then I was on to the next thing. And I was probably worried. While I was doing it, I was probably worried about the thing I had to do 5 days from then, instead of just being present in that moment. And Hoonigan was a lot of that too, and I think now I'm trying to be like, all right, I need to be like really enjoying the thing I'm doing today, because I have this great history of 2 decades worth of stuff I've done in car culture. And look, there were moments that were amazing, but there's a lot of other moments where I was like, man, I wish I just stopped to smell the roses a little bit longer while I was there.
That's
So
the best piece of advice that you could.
It's crazy the way that works. When you like have success, you reach a point where you look back and you look at all those events. Like, even in my career, I look back at all that stuff and you're like, holy fuck, dude, the things we were there, dude, we did that. We did that. And it's like,
But in
you
the
have to, like,
moment,
you
it
have
was
to like pinch yourself.
grind.
In the moment you were thrashing to get there, and you were probably nervous as fuck that whatever you built needed to perform, or you were so focused on that being a success for your business and your future. You didn't stop and like enjoy it.
And then halfway through, when it does perform, you're thinking about how the fuck we're going to top this.
Yeah, because
You're thinking
like, well,
about
now
the next thing.
I got to
and
keep fucking rolling. People are going to expect
the,
this. Like,
the day's not over yet. At least fucking enjoy it and then think about that tomorrow.
It's almost like the double-edged
Yeah.
sword. Like, you wouldn't have gotten there if you didn't have the passion for
Yep.
it. But then you can't appreciate everything that your passion got you because you're worried about staying at that level and building the next one.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's crazy, fucking crazy.
one of those trips that always sticks for me was the first power tour. We did power tour at Hoonigan. So I moved to California, and it's probably like the first week that I'm living in Venice. I'm walking down, sort of like down along the beach, and there's like a parking lot that runs along the beach. And there was I don't even think it was a Nova. I think it was like an Omega or something, but it didn't have a hood on it, and it had like just this badass. At the time, I don't even know what it was, because I was so far into American cars. It was probably just a small block Chevy with like a hi hat on it or something, but it just looked so tough. It looked so tough, and I was like, why do I want that? right? And
Probably
like
wasn't a
American
Nova.
cars weren't that interesting to me in New York because like New York just wasn't a great place for an American car. I'm like, why do I want that? Ended up buying a 72 Nova.
Fuck yeah.
You
See,
know,
I knew
and
there was something I liked about you.
He must have been
Yeah.
doing pretty well. That's a gentleman's car. That
was at the
was a
tail end
6-figure
of-
car
yeah.
at least.
Tail end of the career.
so you know, uh bought a 72 Nova. It was like kind of a beater from Arizona. Drove it home. Had a 454 in it. And like just really like started to notice like I'm gravitating to this more than anything else now. Like I've got the 911, but I'm driving the Nova every day. And it just felt like okay, this is what you're supposed to drive in California. Like if you got to sit in traffic, it might as well be fucking loud, right?
Hell yeah.
If all you've got is like stoplight to stoplight, at least you can break the wheels each stoplight run. Like it was like, and this thing was it was open diff, like it was nothing to to be really excited about, but I was excited about it, and it was something that was different, and so then I took it upon myself to be like, okay, we're gonna go, and this was before YouTube for Hoonigan, and what I was starting to realize, and I'll take a little step back. While there wasn't, while we may not have scripted out the entire plans of what Hoonigan was, the one thing that we did that was rather strategic was a realization that like we were going to be more than just a brand to one segment of the space, right?
Cool.
That we didn't want to just be for drifters or just for rally, right? Actually, when we started in the space, we came in as rally guys, but we actually realized that there was more of an audience in drifting. So we put most of our effort year one into drifting, right? But come around year two, year three, there's the like, okay, we want to expand. We've done pretty well in drifting. We have an audience there. And we looked at it from like a Venn diagram, right? Of like if we could be that in every single circle of car culture, there was this little shithead group that would like Hoonigan, right? And it didn't matter if they were into like it didn't matter what they were into, and all the way down to like pre-war like hot rods. There was one guy who was like, "Yeah, I fucking like burnouts." Like, we're gonna speak to that person, right? Because that person lives in every group, and instead of catering to one space, we're going to continue to grow. So every year we kind of had this other target. So the second one for us was off-road. We did the BJ Baldwin Recoil 2 film. That really kind of put us into that space, and we did more and more with the off-road groups there. And then, as you start looking at the math, especially in the United States, you're like, okay, like it'd be foolish for us not to be more into domestic American cars, muscle cars, and all of this. And for me, and this is partially why I explain why I have 27 cars, is because like in order for me to really do this, I have to be a part of it. Like I have to get into it, or at least someone at Hoonigan has to be very involved. Kurt was super involved in drifting and had that drift passion. So I was always like a drift spectator. I enjoy sliding a car around. I enjoy sort of the sport of it all, but it's not like my number one passion. It was for him. So like he had enough passion to bring us real authenticity in that world and continue that. We obviously brought more and more people there, but when it came to sort of the muscle car and hot rod space, there really wasn't anyone in the doors who was that person. John Chase came in while this was all sort of happening, and there was this guy Eddie Longshore who worked in the warehouse who was big into American cars, and he was actually a big part of like what drove me to. It was just something I thought was really cool. He had a bubble wagon slam that was thing barely ran, but it was super cool. But I looked at that and I was like, okay, I want to get into this, and I was like, what's a cool event that like we could go to as Hoonigan? And I heard about Power Tour, and I was like, okay, we're gonna go to Power Tour, and I had 65 days from the time I took my car apart till Power Tour, and it was like the most painful 65 days. And I did in those 65 days, we pulled the body off the frame, did an Art Morrison rear subframe, front subframe setup for it. So back half the car. did a MSD, what was it, the like atomic EFI, right? Removed the car, put that on, and then repainted the whole car, not like nicely, but repainted it, and just kind of went through the whole car. I mean, it was like a full frame off, kind of. I wouldn't say it was not a restoration because the car was meant to look ratty, but it was just so much work in 60 days that it's the biggest project I had taken on at that point, and I did most of it just myself and my wife. So like my wife and I, like we would finish the day of work, and then her and I would go to the other side of the shop and we would just work on that car until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't that good of a welder. A friend of mine would come and weld, but like if he came he had nowhere to stay, so he would like sleep at my house every night. Like it was this like we would like it was this crazy 60-day run, and then all of a sudden it's time for Power Tour, and we got everything but the brakes done. We shipped the car out to a shop. This was the one that went from like Wisconsin down to Louisiana, and we shipped the car out. And I had someone else do the brakes just because I had ran out of time. They ran, I think they ran all the brakes soft line. I was like, that's fine, whatever I've got, as long as like I can go drive the car. So drove the car for the first time ever to like at Power Tour, like going to registration. And then John Chase also had this 55 Chevy Tri 5 by Fire, and the two of us took that on Power Tour. And this was like I don't think I've ever really kind of talked about this because it was a super fun event for the team, but it was so stressful internally because we had gotten a small bit of money from Edelbrock to like create some content around this, and that was really like the test that like we could go do content. And I wanted to make content outside of the Gymkhana stuff. I wanted to do like this simpler daily stuff, and in the end I don't think we made much out of it. We made enough to make everybody happy, but I was for sure that I was going to get back to LA, and like the bean counters, who ran the company's money were going to be like, you shouldn't have ever done that. You're never doing that again. That totally wasn't worth it. Right. Like the whole time I just felt like we had to like really, really deliver on this trip that we went to go do this thing. And in the end, like we came back and like Hot Rod did like a spread on us. And like, I forget. I think it was Finnegan and Freiberger. I think like said publicly in front of a bunch of other people that like Hoonigan was more roadkill than roadkill, because like our cars broke every single day and we were on the side of the road every day fixing our cars, and like the craziest fixes ever, like just like using concrete to like like grind down bolts, and like just all the crazy stuff that people caught us doing. And we were just telling that story of it. Like we would be showing up at the end of the day to every event as everyone was leaving. We'd be like the last people to get there. Like I did they did like a burnout challenge, and like I did it with no brakes and just smashed the car up against like a K rail and was like go for gold, bent the bumper in. Like we just had this like no fucks care like moment the whole time we were there, and every day we were broken down. We made a bunch of other friends while we were there, and it was a lot of it was a lot of fun, but I don't remember it being fun. I just remember it being sort of
So
brutal and
stressful.
all this pressure. But in the end, it totally paid off. And then we went back the following year. And the following year actually was fun because there was no longer like this need to prove ourselves. Like we got there and it was like this, like we got to just go. I was in my own car. Now this year was actually a lot of fun because that year was a 454. The following year was an Edelbrock Pat Moosey 555. So now all of a sudden the thing was a monster. I remember I pulled up on Finnegan as soon as we got on the road. I saw Finn and he was in the monster. What was the I forget what they called that, the
blasphemy thing.
no, the pickup. What was the pickup truck that they had? They had that C10.
Oh yeah.
I don't remember.
I'm
Yeah. And I pulled up on him and he just shook his head. He just shook his head. He shook his head. I'm like, come on, let's go. Shook his head, shook his head. And I ran into him later on. And I was like, what's up, man? You didn't want to run? He was like, I saw the cameras. He's like, I knew that you had a new Edelbrock under the hood. He's like, I did not want to get smoked on camera by the Hoonigans. He was like, I was not looking for that at the moment. But yeah, I mean, that thing was, I think statute of limitations are gone now. That thing would sit, comfortably up to 150 on the highway, which is crazy for an old Nova. Like,
Wow.
I think it was just a monster. Yeah. So, but yeah, it was, that was a lot of fun. And like, Yeah, and I think that was this like it was cool because it was this real expansion moment for Hoonigan because all of a sudden a bunch of people were getting to see Hoonigan that had like not like saw us but knew us as like the Ken Block company, didn't see us as these guys who also like muscle cars and like hot rods and all of that. And then we got home from that, and a year later we launched the YouTube Daily Transmission show, and that was sort of like I always referred to it as like Jay Leno's like it was like Jay Leno's garage for scumbags, right? Like we just it was like bring your car over, do some burnouts, try not to hit the wall, it was the same kind of mentality though of like just car culture at abroad, and a lot of that was just like my love for all things sort of automotive. So yeah, I don't know. I don't even know where this question went. I kind of tangented. I hope it made sense, but here we are. ADHD. There we go.
Boom. It's amazing the demographic that it reaches out to because like my son at probably he was watching all your content at probably 6-7 years old, and he's still at 14 he's still like super deep into it. Me as like an experienced car guy and an American muscle car guy, dude, I'm all over it. It's the only thing I've ever seen that just appeals to every like genre of every demographic in the automotive aftermarket.
You said there's those group of shitheads in all of them, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah, I mean that was the goal for us, and like it was really a lot of fun in that era of like the early YouTube. When I say early, I mean like the 2016, 2017, sort of 2018 era of like we were still just making content in the parking lot. Because we were embracing everything. Like our whole goal was like, we wanted such a mixture of people showing up, and it would be interesting because so many people would show up and be like, oh, I don't even understand why like you want me on the show, right? Like I don't seem like what your normal audience is, but it's just kind of what it was across the board because it didn't matter if it was like old hot rodders or it was guys coming in with like their one guy built an electric car out of forklift batteries. But what was cool was he actually put it on a manual transmission, and it was in an old Corolla. So he could actually clutch kick it and like make it slide. And we were all like, okay, the first electric car I think we kind of like, just wish it made noise. But we were like all about just trying to embrace, all these different kind of things and just take a different spin on it. And that's why like we did things like build donk, right? Which seemed, when we first launched the donk build, which was like mid-COVID, I remember a lot of people going, do you think anyone's going to watch this? And it ended up being one of our most loved builds of all time. And I think one of the reasons why it was such a loved build was because, and this wasn't really planned, but you could watch the cast of characters like have a story arc where they fell in love with the car. Where at first it was like, oh, this is Scotto's folly. Like, why does Scotto want us to build this? And then all of a sudden, as it was starting to come together, like everyone got more and more interested. And then like the first burnout, and I did the first burnout in it, and it was full on fire burnout, like car caught fire. It was like this massive ripper, and everybody was like, "Yep, that thing's sick," And it was like you got to watch the team fall in love with it, and that was actually what was fun for me because everybody on the team was a different type of car guy. Right, like Hurt was like only like Japanese like drift cars. Like John Chase was into old schools. Like Vinny was mostly into like BMWs, Porsches, and track cars. Like Ron just like rally cars. Everybody had like their own like little niche, and like it was fun when we can find a project that everybody liked something in it. That's when we knew we had like a good project, right? Like where everyone found something about the project they enjoyed.
Well, to your point, dude, every shithead likes burnouts. So if it's fast and it's spinning the tires, like
it is the universal language for sure. For sure.
On the build stuff, now that you're talking to the build stuff, you also said you from the start all the way through, you guys were very data oriented, right? So you're on the backside, you're looking at everything, and you've already, obviously your Gymkhana stuff is your feature film stuff, right? So that's going to hit in a certain way. You get your daily stuff that's going to hit, but the daily stuff, you've got those episodes. Getting the audience to follow along through a build, right, is one. It's tough in itself, right, because you can't just build it overnight. And the other part is. Does that change the building of the car based on the data that you're getting, that of what's going to hit?
Yeah, and I think that's actually one of the unfortunate parts. Like as I'm now a few years removed from making that content every day, I think some of what the algorithm forces you to do in terms of builds is actually sort of dictating like where a lot of builds and the way cars are built are done. One thing, for example, and I mean, you guys know this because you guys build like real deal customer cars and you understand how this should be built. But we used to build cars and then paint them at the end because and that's like something that's really created by like that Discovery Channel model of like the final reveal, the final transformation. But when I used to build cars, when I was younger and off camera, it's like, you would tear a car down and then the car would go to paint and then you'd put a bunch of protective around it and then you'd put it back together again instead of like building the whole car, taking it apart to paint it and put it back together. And like if you're building a super, super high-end project, like I get the need for that. But for most people who are scrapping with it, it's like you get all your parts, you paint the car, you put it all back together, and then and then it's done. But like that doesn't work because it's not like a major reveal. So you find like you end up doing some stuff out of order. And then the biggest thing I think is, and I think this is a real burnout for creators who make build content. I just did a video with Vinny on his channel about like sort of reality versus the internet and what people expect out of a build. And the thing that I kind of kept going back to was like, there's like the last 10% of the project is usually the hardest, and it's the part no one wants to watch. Right? Like no one wants to watch wiring to begin with. If you
Yeah, it
enjoy
sucks.
wiring and if you have a multimeter that you love, like don't make YouTube content. No one cares. I do. I do
Right.
because I'm
Sure.
chasing down a fault right now on
Yeah.
my Econoline, but everybody else doesn't care, right? And it's like it's those things, it's all the like just the small like tidy stuff to just make a build work properly doesn't make for good content, right? Like good content is this is what YouTube wants to see. They want to see the announcement of the car. We're building this, and then it's like, okay, that's cool. What engine are you putting into it? We're gonna put in, a Godzilla. Sick. Okay, we like that. Like, or we don't. Like, and you kind of keep going down that process of like, and we're gonna paint it this color, and we're gonna do this with it. And then the minute you actually start getting into like the small, meticulous stuff, you start to lose the audience, and that's painful because that stuff actually takes a lot of time. So we found that when we were doing content, probably 6 to 8 episodes maximum was like worked for a longer build. For us, there's other people who every single day will put out a video of doing something small, and that moves the conversation story, that moves the conversation forward. But for us, while we were making a bunch of other stuff, like 6 or so episodes worked. If we went to like 12 or 14, we started to kind of lose people as we started to become more educational and less entertainment.
Yeah.
And that's always a bummer because it's like I want to be able to educate with the stuff, but you got to find that kind of in between. And my biggest problem now is, and this was the conversation I had gotten into the other day with Vinny on his channel, was I think we've started building cars for YouTube instead of building cars we want to drive. Right. And I've got a couple like my Nova I built because it made sense for me. It's not that crazy. I mean, it's crazy for the time maybe, but like nowadays like no one would even really pay attention to it. Like it's a Chevy engine in a Chevy, no one cares. Wait, it's a Chevy engine that was made in the same era as that car, no one cares. like wait, you didn't put in a jet engine, you didn't put in a Maserati engine, like
Yeah.
it's like we've pushed it so far because that's the type of stuff that gets clicks. But I think it does this weird thing to car culture because it makes you not like respect just like a really fun, good driving car. It's like everything's got to be ridiculous. And in all of I mean, we built an Indy car mounted to a Honda Ridgeline. Like it was a actual
Shit,
Indy
what's
Right,
car
that?
in
right
the
up your
back.
alley.
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah, it was an actual Indy car with a Honda Ridgeline front. It is one of the craziest things we ever built. And that was definitely us jumping the shark because I think at a certain point, the fans didn't really care about the car in the end because we didn't care about the car in the end. Like it wasn't really usable. We didn't build this thing that you could go and drive every day and do all these things with. So, yeah, I think that from the content side of it's really sort of changed the way that builds go. And a lot of it's like, does it make a good thumbnail? Like, can I show this in a thumbnail for people to click on? And there's just certain things that don't come across in a good thumbnail, right?
Oh, yeah.
That being said, I do want to give a shout out to the Bad Obsession Garage guys. I don't know if you've ever seen Project Binky. They've been building it for like what feels like 25 years.
I haven't seen it.
It's totally worth it. But like they will put out one episode maybe a year, maybe like every 6 months, and they will spend 45 minutes building a single bracket to hold like a reservoir.
What are they building? What
And
is
it's fantastic. It's called Bad Obsession Garage, and they're British. And Project Binky. They were building like an all-wheel drive Mini, but it just like if you like fabrication,
Yeah.
it's very very good on just. It's also like it's fabrication done with relatively simple tools. I mean, they got fab tools, but like compared to what we're used to in America, where like you're like, oh yeah, of course I've got everything Bally makes. Like I've got it's like
Yeah.
it's not like that. Like a lot of stuff they're just doing it with a grinder and a hammer and like making their own forms and stuff like that. And it's really cool because they're putting a lot of they're breaking the mold of what like everyone else does for build content, and they have a particular audience that really likes their stuff, but they super deep dive, and it's all built. It's funny because you couldn't make this show today on YouTube because it's all kind of made to mock like a British television program. Like the whole show feels like a bad BBC, like off BBC broadcast or something, right? So like, which doesn't really translate, I think, to the typical American audience, but I enjoy it.
Is it like
anyway?
You remember Junkyard Wars? That show?
Oh, I love
Dude,
Junkyard
that was
Wars.
one of my favorites. But that had that
so
like
much.
super foreign vibe.
Yeah.
To it, but there was still something
That
about
was a
it.
great show.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I forgot all about that
Dude,
show.
That was like
I
number
actually,
one.
I actually was in development with Netflix on a show called Junkyard Dogs, and it was like similar to Junkyard Wars in the idea that like the only thing you could do was build stuff that was in a junkyard. Right. But it was like putting teams together, but like to build race cars to go do certain things. Unfortunately, we were like in development and then COVID hit and they shut everything down. But I love that like concept of going into a junkyard and just like, all right, we'll take this, we'll figure this out. Like I think that's what everyone thinks about when they walk through yards. When you're like at a pick and pull, you're like,
For sure.
I could do this, put this and this and this in here and make
Dude,
that
that
run.
was like
So-
you've got these videos of these crazy talented like craftsmen, metal shapers, and like bike builder extraordinaires, but those were the dudes that were crazy talented.
Yes.
Like there would always be one guy in Junkyard
Yeah.
Wars who was the fucking genius
Yeah.
that would just pull it
Yeah.
all together.
You put Diener on that
Oh
show?
yeah, Dean would be phenomenal in that show.
The stuff that they would put, yeah, it was really good.
And it's always the guy who knew how to put it all together is the guy who like couldn't do anything but a booger weld, but knew that this particular piece inside of this alternator would also
done.
run a refrigerator. You're like, all right, whatever.
Crazy
So
shit.
yeah, that was a good show. I'm gonna go back and watch that.
Dude, the Gymkhana stuff. That who the fuck came up with like just the concept and like how did it evolve into that budget, that massive production? Because there's really nothing I think still to this day that's been done on YouTube to that scale. I mean, where you're shutting down whole major cities.
Yeah.
Tell me about how hell that came to be. Because
It escalated quickly. The first Gymkhana cost $30,000 to make, right? And
That was the practice. That was the practice.
That was the practice one,
Yeah.
yeah. And that was basically, paying the camera ops, which was Mad Media, the production company at the time, and renting the location and bringing in some food for people to eat. Like it was really, really simple. And then it moved into millions and millions of dollars, like very fast. I think you pointed this out before, is the idea of like you're constantly trying to one up yourself.
yeah.
And that's really like we got into this world of like, okay, well, the next one has to be bigger and better. The next one has to be bigger and better. And once we realized that we could go into cities, which was, it was Gymkhana 5, which was the San Francisco. Once we realized that like we could go and shut down a city, I mean, it just opened up such a world of, well, now everything feels possible,
When did you
right? Like we
realize
shut
you?
down.
When did you realize you had the juice to do that?
And how do you do it?
So that job was actually very interesting. The previous year, we had done something at Universal Studios, but Gymkhana 3, we went and scouted Detroit, and here was our
Well,
feeling.
that's
It's
easy, man. It's already shut down. Like,
so
that's
so that's
okay.
so that it was even crazier because it was 2011. It's like it was even more shut down in 2011. So we figured like, okay, we're gonna go to Detroit and we're gonna go film something in Detroit. And we went and looked at, everything from the train station to the old Packard plant and all these different things.
It's a shutdown
And
city, and you can just pay a corrupt politician to like just let you have it. Like, good.
which is what we thought, and they wouldn't let us do it because they thought the fear was that we were gonna celebrate the blight of Detroit too much, right? And the Detroit was trying to turn itself around, and we were sitting there talking about going to all these derelict parts of Detroit, and they just weren't really interested in it. And we got shut down pretty hard from that, and it was kind of hard to navigate. So that was like our original thought of like, oh, we're gonna do a city, and then that didn't work. So we went to the Autodrome, which is the one with the big banked wall in it. That was just this kind of cool racetrack location that Ken saw in a blog post somewhere and was like, oh, this would be cool. Let's go there. Then Universal Studios was a cool location, but we worked with a different team for Universal, and they were like a more of a Hollywood. They had done the opening scene for like Zombieland, right? So they were coming from the Hollywood experience. They weren't coming from the skateboard, snowboarding, off-road racing sort of experience that like we had, our previous shooters coming from. And they just had a completely different, outlook on it all because, they were used to closing streets for car commercials. So, what's the difference is really like how they looked at it. And there was a location scout who he had just come off of working on Avengers, and they were originally going to shoot it in San Francisco, and instead they shot it in Miami. So he already knew a ton of the people he had just gone on the scout for, and he knew a bunch of things that were available. And he called the city and said, "Hey, I got this car commercial that we're shooting. It's pretty cool. It's going up on YouTube, but like, the last couple have done well. Or, would you guys be interested in hosting us?" And they said sure. And we originally were actually gonna go and film I'm blanking on the name of it, Mare Island, which is where Mythbusters used to do a lot of their explosions. Like whenever they would blow shit up, they'd go out to Mare Island. We were actually going to go there first, and we went. And, it's a shipbuilding port for the Navy, so they've got like these really cool, like the dry dock builds and all that kind of stuff. And we went and looked at it, but like I don't know, it wasn't like that cool. It was cool, but it didn't feel like it was cool enough for a whole film. And this particular location scout said, hey, I think there's a possibility that we could do some stuff in SF. Like, do you want to go look at SF? And I'm like, okay, well, what kind of stuff do you think we can do? And he's like, well, like, I mean, I know we can shut down the Bay Bridge.
Okay.
What else you got?
Yeah. I was like, oh, we're starting with that? Okay. So yeah, I mean, and then we went, and I mean, there was almost the only thing that they said no to was Lombardy Street.
Lombard Street
was the only thing they said no. Yeah, that was the only thing they said no to.
That was the only two things I
Everything
would have
else-
said. It was gonna be the Bay Bridge or Lombard Street. It's the only two things I know
Yeah.
in San Francisco.
That's the zigzag one.
Yeah,
No,
that was
the zigzag.
yeah, the zigzag. They let us do another one, which is called Vermont Street, which is like not as famous as that, but like still gives you the same feel. But everything else they let us do downtown Twin Peaks. I mean, it was pretty incredible. I'll be honest, I don't think you could do it again today. I think it was this small moment in history that they were open to us doing it. I think that like takeover culture and all that has really made cities like a lot less open to allowing people to do stuff that they feel like could be like copycatted and stuff. So yeah, but and also San Francisco's changed. I mean, San Francisco has become less and less of a car friendly city. But at the time, they were super keen to it, and the whole time we were on set, every time a cop would start walking over to us, I'd be like, this is it. This is it. They're shutting us fucking down. The gig is up. They realize that we're just a bunch of shitheads just trying to slide cars around. Like they get it. And they would show up and be like, man, this is really cool. And we're like, what? And like, or the cop would be like, hey, you want me to do a burnout in the cruiser? He'd be like, this is the coolest thing ever. Yeah. And then after that, it became the opposite. Then all of a sudden it became like, well, we feel like anything's possible, right? I mean, that gave us this feeling of like, okay, we're going to go do donuts above the Hollywood sign, which is actually a piece of property controlled by Homeland Security. And it is one of the most difficult things I've ever permitted. And the Homeland Security officer straight up told us that if we pointed cameras in one particular direction, he would shoot us. And like he didn't like crack a smile. He just was like, I will shoot you.
Huh.
And then just turned around and walked away. And I was like, oh, okay. And what I later ended up finding out is that the radio towers that would communicate California back to the White House if satellites were taken down are there. So like they're highly guarded and like they care because it's all it's like old school World War II era sort of communication devices. And they're like, yep, this is super important to keep the West Coast in contact with the Pentagon. So like, but like, we were able to get locations like that. We just keep asking for them. And, I think at a certain point, it almost felt a little spoiled because it just got to the point where, once we had done, SF, it became a lot easier to walk into a city like Los Angeles and get what we wanted from them. Or, we went to Dubai, and well, maybe not my favorite film we ever made because there wasn't that much natural obstacles that really worked. The access we had was insane, right? Like, I mean, they just let us do whatever we wanted. Unfortunately, it's just really flat and it doesn't have the same topography or obstacle types of things that we were able to find in SF. But they just were like, yeah, you guys want to go do this? Like, you guys want to go destroy like the entranceway of a 7-star hotel? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but that's where didn't you entry like or the intro or the beginning? Sorry, intro. Like, you had all the because they got like Ferraris and Lambos and stuff like that for their cop cars and stuff, right?
Yeah, we did a donut box made out of all their supercar cop cars. Yeah,
I remember that.
Yeah, because that was just the whole concept of that film was just
excess.
Let's just show off the excess and the opulence of Dubai and just how crazy it all is. Yeah.
Do you ever start getting cocky just to see what you can get away with? Start asking for things just for the hell of it?
Sure, for sure, for sure. But it's funny because in the end, one of my favorite films we ever did was like the least amount of access, which was the one we shot in Buffalo, which most people don't even know it's Buffalo. We just called it the ultimate industrial raw playground or something like that, or raw industrial playground. And it was an old Ford plant and then the old train station and then a few other locations in between. And I think that one was because the location was not as good, we put way more effort into the moments. Like you start to like lean too much into like, look at this background. And that was Dubai, which was number 8. And then number 9, I'm like, man, we had the coolest location, but like the driving was not on the level. So in 9, it's like, sorry, Ken, you're going to need to slide your car in a drift jump in front of a moving train. And I'm going to need you to stick one tire off of the edge of a dock that's got water 60 feet deep in it. Like, it was like, oh, and I'm going to make you do donuts around a raptor hung by a Sikorsky in a windstorm. Like this was where, because then it was like, let's not think about the location. Instead, let's come in and try to make the moments as good. And on top of that, which is something that we don't share often, Ken absolutely hated that car. It was the Ford Focus RS, and he just didn't like how it drove, and he hated that he felt that car robbed him of a potential championship in rallycross. So he just drove it like he wanted it to break. Like it was like one of those like he beat it like it owed him money kind of thing. And it was like every single stunt, I was like, oh, he's gonna break the car on this one. Like I think he wanted the car to break, and it ended up just being this amazing performance because he didn't really care if he crashed it. So, which was different than the Hoonicorn. Like he never wanted to crash the Hoonicorn. Like this thing, he was like, whatever. If I write it off, I write it off. Like I don't know if I could have convinced him to to almost stick the Hoonicorn in the river. But with that car, he was like, whatever, I
Fuck
can
it.
swim. Let's do it.
That
Yeah,
was
exactly.
his bullet hole, bitch. Just to throw it back.
Exactly.
Any of those
Exactly.
Any of those things get piled up? Are there any like bloopers behind the scenes? I mean, they're doing some sketchy shit.
Yeah. I mean, we've had some incidents for sure. Some of the most like big moments that like really did massive damage to the car were things that didn't matter, like visually were not that interesting. So on Gymkhana 4, we had these wheels made by 1552, and they were like prototype wheels, and they made these forged wheels out of this 5-spoke design called the tarmac. The thing about the tarmac is like it was already a very, very thick, heavy spoke wheel, and we were just trying to get the weight of the wheel down, and they hadn't even made the production models yet. And they made us these wheels, and they were too strong because typically in racing you want your wheel
shear.
you want your wheel to shear before anything else does. And Ken tapped like a 4-inch high curb in something that you normally would, maybe it breaks the wheel, maybe it breaks some studs, whatever. And instead it sheared the subframe mounting points off the chassis. So
It's a great wheel ad. Yeah. A great wheel ad.
Yeah. Well, that's why whenever I see people post photos of broken wheels and they're like, don't buy wheels from this company, I'm like, why? Because you would rather just completely write off your car. Like, you want your wheels to break at a certain point.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah, so like there's moments like that, and like obviously it costs us a ton of time and money. We crashed the car pretty badly because we had a tire delam issue on another event, and like those are things that in the time you don't really talk about because like you have a tire sponsor, so you're like, oh shit, all right, I guess just eating this one. But yeah, I don't know, like there's definitely bloopers because there's definitely things that just didn't like go the way you wanted them to, but we were pretty good with that. I mean, everyone would always give Ken shit like, oh, of course anyone could do it with that number of practice runs. And typically with the practice runs, it was like the first one was close, the second one was closer, the third one was spot on, and then we moved on. Like it was always one of those like, yeah, we could have run it on first take. It's just like for us, it wasn't about doing it in a first take. It was like, do you want to be 3 inches from the obstacle, or do you want to like just graze the obstacle?
Touch it.
And like, yeah, and it's like for us, it was like you just want to just tap a little bit. And coming from skateboarding, you would never do the trick once and then ride away. If you rode away and you looked a little weird on the ride away and like your afterbang wasn't good, like you wouldn't use the shot. You would do it again, and you would also crash out. Like, that's why like growing up watching skateboarding videos, everyone's favorite part was watching the falls. Like the falls was great. And the falls is what made you realize that like you had to work hard to get to that. And still to this day, it's a celebrated thing in skateboarding and in like BMX and other things where you watch a guy try something 6 times and then he finally lands it. When he lands it, everyone goes crazy. For some reason, when that transferred over to the car community, everyone's like, I don't know why he can't just do this on the first try.
Yeah, it took long enough.
And you're like, because we've never done it before. I don't know. When was the last time you spun 270 through a set of barrels and then another 180 out and then like up a hill? Like, I don't know. But no one had. Like, we were figuring this stuff out like on set,
Think about that core audience that you said. It's those segments of shitheads, and those segments of shitheads, us included, we all think we can do the same thing. Oh, yeah, I can fucking do that. I guarantee. Give me 4 per tries. I guarantee you.
Yeah,
that's what a lot of those.
That level of that's one where I can clearly be like, never do that.
100%. But the keyboard warriors and the stuff is exactly the ones.
A little more throttle, buddy. Like Jesus,
just get a good rental car. You're good.
I've always wanted to do. Do you guys know Chris Harris? He was on Top Gear UK for a while.
I know of him. Don't know him.
Fantastic journalist, amazing driver. I mean, the dude's like, finished top 3 at the Nürburgring before. We brought him out to drive one of Ken's cars early on, and he had like a really hard time just getting it to do donuts. And he got out of the car and he went, well, I guess I couldn't do this if I had enough practice. Like that was like that was that realization that like, oh, maybe this is a little bit harder than I think it is. And that actually spawned this idea for a TV show that never happened. But I forget what the name of the show was. It was a funny show name, but the whole idea was like basically you get to come and try a Gymkhana stunt. Like, you think you can do this? Like, okay, you come, but if you don't get it done, we just get to like publicly shame you. Like we just get to trash you for like not being able to do it. But if you can get to it, then you get the next level, next level, next level. Because it would just be kind of a fun. It would have been a fun thing to sort of put together with people. Because I think people don't understand a couple things about it, which is like one, everyone always compares it to drifting, and the one thing people don't realize is those guys have a ton of practice runs. They also get to rerun the same track over and over and over again, year after year after year after year.
Yep.
And the last, and it's also a standard kind of drift angle. Like you're following a standard curve. Once you kind of like start mixing in weird kind of maneuvers there, where you're going left, right, around things, around cones, and then you also have sort of different surfaces. Like there's so many things that go into it. But the other part that I don't think anyone thinks about is like you're sitting in the car's off, you're waiting, you're waiting, you're waiting. You've been waiting for 15 minutes, you're hot, you're in your suit, and then all of a sudden someone's like, okay, helmet on, go, 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 go. And like boom, start the car up, start one of the tires up, do the trick, and then you're done. And then you're on timeout for the police to let the traffic bleed through. Like, it's not this like perfect situation at all. It's like this high pressure situation that 90 people are watching you, and then you don't get it. Everyone's like, all right, we're going again. Like
there's never been
so much extra stress.
Never been a professional race car driver, a drifter, wherever it is, that's waited on a director to tell him to go because of the lighting's good. No, just a couple more minutes.
Yeah.
Just a couple more minutes. All right, now go. I guess that
or you go and then you're told, oh, sorry, the drone didn't get that shot. We're gonna need you to do that again. That was perfect, by the way. Can you just do the exact same thing again?
The premise of that show, I guess, answers my next question. Do you read the comments?
Whole time. Yeah,
Really?
I'm a big comment. Yeah, I'm a big comment guy. I'm pretty good at filtering out the bad and being like, there's like kind of like three levels of comments. There's like just the pure haters, like you just hate this. Then there's the people who love it so much that you can't listen to them either, right? You got to like throw both ends out, right? They're like the people who like they came there. They didn't even watch the video. They're just hate. They just came there to hate. And then there's the other one who like the video hasn't even loaded and they're like, Ken Block is driving God. You're like, okay, yeah, you're on the other side of that too. I got to throw both of those out. And you got to like kind of look down the middle of like the more like constructive notes, right? And sometimes like when people like, I'm the first to say that, I'm never happy with any film we make. That, you always want them to be better. You always wish things could have happened better on the day. You always wish you could have gotten another shot at this. Every once in a while, you get that one particular, moment that's great, but you usually don't get the whole film that way. So a lot of times when people say things that like hit you, they hit you because you were thinking the same thing, right? You're like, this one feels a little light on this, or yeah, this one doesn't have the same energy as the other one. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thing, but I find that one of the things that makes YouTube and social media content more interesting than the movies is like you do get people's opinion, which is either good or bad. Because I think there's sometimes you can take some good out of it, and you can kind of understand like what the audience wants. But you also have to be careful because there's been times where not really as much in the Gymkhana films, but in the like in the regular Hoonigan content where you start to listen to the audience too much and you realize that you're listening to like a silent minority, a vocal minority instead of a silent majority that was totally happy with what you were doing. Yep. They completely were happy. And you can look at the views. You're like, oh, we're getting 1 million views an episode, but like there's like 60 people who are really unhappy about this episode. And it's like, yeah, but the other people are watching it, right? Yeah. So it's a difficult one to really kind of how much effort do you put into it? I don't know. I kind of mix the comments with my gut, but I like the comments. It brings a different sort of reaction to it, but you got to have some thick skin for comments because some of the comments are just brutal.
Hateful.
So,
hateful.
The daggers are the one word ones when it's just like gay ...
Yeah.
Actually, what the fuck? Like,
Which part?
Yeah.
Like, at least timestamp it. Tell me which part.
Like the whole thing, or just that one part that like kind of was.
Yeah, because I agree. At that part, there was some parts that were.
Douche.
Yeah.
Like, those are the ones that sting, because you're like, well, you start wondering. You're like, well, what part?
Yeah,
what
like
did I do?
The you part. The part that you were in it.
Is it everything? Was it start to finish?
Where did the this versus that come from? Because I love
was
those.
Actually,
those. The matchups were amazing.
It was so we were never a drag race brand, right? Like that just wasn't our space. But everyone sort of enjoys the classic racing, right? Like A to B, side by side, heads up is the most classic form of racing. Even if you want to be that person who's sitting there going, oh, I only care about, the fastest cars around a corner and, blah, 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 blah. Like there's still something fun about it. And when we were doing Daily Transmission, we had this little segment called Space Race, where you would race for the length of a 40-foot container. Right. And we did it as a joke, and the audience kind of really started to enjoy it because it was like no one preps a car for a 40-foot race.
No.
Right. Like that's just not what anyone's so like there was like these really unexpected races where like an electric smart car would smoke something that was way faster because it had the ability to get up to speed or whatever. And, it was just like, and then like at one point, like we were bringing in like 9-second cars to run a 40-foot race and then like could barely shut down before hitting the gate another 40 feet past it. Right. And we just started to realize like the audience enjoyed sort of that unexpected. And I started to think, you know what? There's all these race shows out there and all they do is race. Like they're racing for a core audience. It's like this Skyline or, this GTR versus another GTR that's pretty much the same. Right. And I'm like, I want to see things that feel like they shouldn't race each other. Right. Like the racing community became who has the fastest, big block Nova, who has the fastest, and everything got so like narrowed down. And, in NHRA and other racing series, they do that on purpose to make things, fair. But people just want to know, is a McLaren faster than that old muscle car? Like those were the things I think that people wanted to see. And that was the whole idea of the show, was like mixing the genres. And again, it goes back to sort of what I think a lot of like Hoonigan's initial goal was like, yeah, we want to do rally. Yeah, we want to do drifting. Yeah, we want to do off-road. Yeah, we want to do, hot rods. Yeah, we want to do muscle cars. Like, yeah, we want to do supercars. But now we want to do them all together. Like we don't want to just speak to those communities individually. We want those communities to go up against each other. And it just worked out really well for us when we did Hoonicorn versus the World, that the Hoonicorn was that fast. We had no idea it was. We really had no idea that car was that fast. Like the car had never been on a dyno. We had only like really street tuned it. And it got faster and faster. So if you were one of the few lucky people to race the car in the first few episodes, you got maybe like a 14 to 1600 horsepower version of the car. The car was probably upwards of 2400 horsepower by the end, because like we didn't realize how much of the how much there was left of the tune. The car was running methanol, so it was like just kept pushing it. And the thing was just a monster, and it worked perfect for a no prep surface, and it really was incredible car. What was great was it got to race everything that was considered fast in sort of the drag race world. So everything from the the GTR group, the all-wheel drive Audis, but then we raced a bunch of big tire cars, small tire cars, like no prep cars. I mean, just a huge mix of all these different things. And that show was fun because it was sort of the unexpected. There was Peak 1320. There's so many racing channels. So many people have been doing great racing for years. But our whole thing was like this versus that. It's not this versus this. It's this versus that. Two completely different things. And I mean, one of my favorite early races we did was we did a Grand National versus a Hyundai Palisade. And the Palisade won. and like it's just a story of like, hey, 80s cars really weren't that fast.
Right.
Like So
You'd be surprised. I think you'd shock a shit ton of people with like what would beat most cars that people thought were fast. Like go take
Hemi
most
versus-
most stock muscle cars and put them up against like an SUV, like a modern SUV. It would get dusted.
Yeah.
You know, big cackling, shaking, like big block
SS454 Chevelle,
like,
you get dusted
dog, man.
by a new Silverado 5.3 work
right.
truck. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah, so I mean
thinking
that was sort of the fun part of it, and then the show just kind of continued to grow and grow and grow in audience. I think mainly because it was always just we really were trying to bring in an outsider who didn't, I don't want to say didn't like drag racing, but didn't consider themselves a drag racing audience, because it was just simple heads to head up. And like we tried to like keep it really sort of simple and also kind of keep it a little bit more like street racing rules, in terms of like its negotiations. Like we're gonna make this a fair race somehow.
Yeah.
And that was something that I really always enjoyed from the street race area. Was like you could go to a night where it was kind of a dead night, and it's like there was a really fast car there, but he still wanted to run. He'd be like, "I'll give you 10 cars."
Yep. The hustler.
And you're
You gotta
like,
have
it's
the hustler.
absurd. Yeah, it's absurd, but it's like there's something kind of fun about like, could they actually get it off of that? And it's funny because so many like, you get a lot of comments where people like, if it's not heads up, it doesn't matter. And it's like, you're missing the point. Like, this is entertainment. It's like, how many cars will it take for this car to actually be able to win and all of that.
I absolutely loved it. It was probably some of my favorite content. It was very easy, like to understand. You didn't have to do a lot on the thumbnails. This versus that. I see two cars. I'm like, oh, absolutely. You got the internet, keyboard warriors that everybody wants to.
It's got to bring them all out.
Well, but you come in with a preconceived notion. Everybody kind of does, right? Especially if you're a car guy.
Yeah.
You see those two, and you're like, I think, but you know what? I'm gonna have to watch. And you usually did 3 runs, right? You did a heads up, and then you did negotiated like
heads up to see where everyone stands.
Yeah.
Unless someone was like really really sort of outgunned, but we would almost always start heads up, and then it was either 500 feet, 1,000 feet, or 1,500 feet. So there was a few things you could negotiate around because you could have a all-wheel drive car that would be super fast to the 500 but would run out of steam to 1,500.
Daunt Master was on there. He came in there hustling too. He was going to negotiate.
He tried. Unfortunately, it was pretty slippery out there for him, and he was having a hard time hooking up. But yeah, I was rooting for him on that one. But we also purposely ran, metrics that other people wouldn't know. Like you don't know what you do in the 1,000 foot or the 1,500. Like everyone knows like the 1,320 or it's like we purposely were doing math that like it would be harder for someone to show up and go, oh, I know how fast that car is on this. So therefore, like they know what to bring to the table, right? And the no prep element really, really works because everyone talks about no prep. But like if you're at a racetrack and it just hasn't been prepped, that's not no prep. Like this is street no prep. Like there was never anything sprayed down. Like there was nothing there. It was an actual, airstrip, so they wouldn't let us put anything down. So although a few guys tried and would sneak it in. We'd catch them. It was always fun. We'd be like, what are you doing over there?
Oh, nothing.
Spray bottle.
What's the one thing that talking about Gymkhanas or any of the other content, what's the one thing that you wanted to do that you never got to?
Aircraft carrier.
Huh.
I always wanted to shoot on an aircraft carrier. That's like a bit of like, it's like, because when I think about the Gymkhana films, it's really just like 5-year-old me with a Hot Wheels going, I'm going to do this. It's actually funny. So my son's 5 years old, and the other day he saw me drawing out a trick, right? Like something I wanted to do. And he was like, what's that, Daddy? And I explained to him what I wanted to do. And he's like, wow. And I pulled out one of his Hot Wheels and I kind of showed it to him. And now he just keeps taking out pieces of paper and drawing tricks on them and handing them to me. And he writes at the bottom by Hudson, so that I don't steal his idea.
Copyright.
He's smart. He's smart.
Understanding of IP than I did for half my life. And I was like, but he keeps saying it to me. But I realized like so much of what drives that for me is that type of like childhood brain of, I want to see this happen. Like I want to see this come about. So for me, you're taking one of the most fun things I had as a kid, which was
You had the micro machines, you had the micro
yeah.
machines. What'd you call it? The aircraft carrier.
Yeah, but for me, for me it was the unobtainium as a kid was the GI Joe's aircraft carrier, right? Like no one had it. I don't
I
even
bet
think
you
they
had one,
made-
didn't you?
No, we didn't have that. Did we? We had the micro machines one.
Yeah,
I never had one.
Tell me you're rich without telling me you're rich by
Yeah.
telling me you had an aircraft carrier
Or a
'Cause I
backpack
didn't
super
even-
soaker.
Yeah, I didn't even grow up in a neighborhood where anyone in the neighborhood had one. It was like people talking about their cousin's friend may have had
Those
one.
were those were in gated neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Only.
Yeah, exactly. That to me, that is the definition of privilege. Is you had an 11-foot long aircraft carrier. Because first, your parents bought it for you. That's a whole other. Second, you had enough space
In your
to
room
house that
to
thing.
have it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. To have that in there. So for me, I think there's some childhood goal of getting my love for making Hot Wheels do crazy things and mixing it with my GI Joe aircraft carrier and bringing that all together. So I've chased it, but it just hasn't come to fruition. It's very difficult because you can't operate things like that on a functioning aircraft carrier because there's a lot of top secrets there. So you have to get one while they're being decommissioned. But if you don't show up in time, they're too decommissioned, and then you can't use them. So it's a weird window you got to find yourself.
You still
in.
can't have that aircraft carrier.
Nope. Nope.
I mean,
Still chasing it
Well,
down.
how-
I
how
gotta
old-
find richer friends.
You made a few bucks. Maybe just buy the GI Joe one at this point. Like,
those things are. Have you checked them?
Yeah, they're like $2-3 grand.
Oh yeah, those things are bringing some serious change.
Selling on Facebook Marketplace.
I could only imagine being that guy though, who's like you're just in the basement playing with your aircraft carrier. You're 45 years old, and you're like, finally, it's finally happened. Your wife's like, "What are you doing?" You're like, You don't know how happy I am inside. You don't know.
You don't know how close I'm 46, and I've never had one. I'm gonna have me.
dude, I honestly don't even remember it.
Oh, you serious?
Yeah.
So you're too young. You're too young.
We had GI Joes though.
But the aircraft carrier came out in '86 or '85.
I mean, that'd be
It was
about
right. It was right. I think it was right around Top Gun or right before Top Gun.
I gotta look at it.
How old?
I'm
how old-
40, I'm 45.
Okay.
I'm 45.
Same.
Yeah. So we're in the same bracket there, 79. So yeah, it was the coolest toy that
There's
that I
ever
never
been.
had.
Nothing's ever surpassed it. Like
It's actually a family. Yeah, it's a family joke because my aunt would always joke, like when my mom would make her mad, she'd be like, "I'm gonna buy him the aircraft carrier," because the joke being that like it was so big for our small house in Queens, like it would just like take up our living room. That it was like she wasn't buying it because I wanted it; she was buying it because she wanted to upset her sister. Like it was used as a threat. And like 5 years ago, I just heard my aunt blurt out, "It's not too late to get that damn aircraft carrier." And I was like, "I'm in. I'm in.
Do it. I wonder even how much it was at that point in time, because I mean, it might as well been $50,000 the way I looked at it. But I don't remember what the price point was when I was, 10 years old, 8 years old.
It had to be a couple. It had to be a couple $100s. I mean, my guess is probably like $400, $500.
I was gonna say
something like that.
$500 at that.
That's a spendy toy.
In mid '80s, $500 was a lot of money.
Couple
I mean,
G's.
to give you an idea, a GT Performer was like $250 at the time, and that was like one of the
shit.
coolest bikes.
Yeah.
So that was half the price of an aircraft carrier. Yeah.
Yeah,
And now a GT
So-
Performer is like 10 G's.
yeah, but it's not an aircraft.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, I know you got a roll here. We'll do standard questions. Best piece of advice.
I think I gave it before. When you think something cool is happening, just take a moment and enjoy it.
That's good.
Yeah, I like that, man. I like that a lot.
Favorite car movie.
Ronin.
Oh, fuck, we're
come up-
the same
come up a
age,
lot,
man. Same age. We talk about Ronin a lot. That was
It's one of the number one reasons I wanted to be a filmmaker and make car. That was the movie that shifted for me. The car I drove to where I am today, I would say work, but it's kind of like a WeWork, is a 2002 Audi S8, which was the car in Ronin.
Yeah. The M5 was the one that did it for me. M5, and we were selling stereo based on that movie, that car scene. Turn up the Pioneer surround sound and the plasma.
First car? We going first car?
No, we'll go favorite. Your most memorable law enforcement interaction story.
It's got to be a good one.
Most favorite law enforcement. Oh boy.
Probably been lost.
Statute of limitations have run out, so you can tell anything.
Or say it was in
so many.
Mexico.
There's so many. I've been rather fortunate, but trying to think. Okay, I'll tell it. I don't know if this is my favorite, but it's definitely the best story. It's 2005. I have been working in media now for about 2 years, and up until this point, I've mostly gotten press cars that are fun, but like nothing extra special. And I get a phone call from the Ford press chief for the like New York area, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to have the new Ford GT, right? So 2005 Ford GT available this weekend. You can drive it for 1 hour." I'm like, okay. So I show up to the Ford dealership they give you the cars in, which is like up in the 50s off of 10th. And I go to show up and I get a notice from him and he said, "Hey, I've got a family emergency. But are you already there?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm there." He's like, "Listen, you can take the car for the day. Just have it back before dark." Okay, got it.
Plans have changed.
Yeah. So I am 24, 25 at the time I start, right? So I got my buddy with me, another car guy, this guy Jay Slack, who I started a car club with, and we're thinking we're just gonna driven it. I mean, at the time we were like, we only have an hour. We're like, maybe we'll just head to the George Washington Bridge and back down again, because we were just thinking like, where could we drive it? So now it's like, okay, we're gonna head up to Bear Mountain, which is like the closest like winding roads outside of New York. So we head cross town, we hit the FDR, and we're headed up on the FDR, and it's bumper to bumper traffic, right? But have either of you guys or any of you guys driven a Ford GT?
Yeah, he's asking like he knows, but it's a great car.
It's
a good fucking car.
That car has a specific bit of history on this podcast because it's been Jeremy's white whale for quite some time.
My favorite car, and everybody brings up an experience with it. But yes, we have a buddy of mine.
Sorry,
but he has driven it.
I've driven it.
So it's fantastic. It is fantastic. I've lapped it at Laguna Seca. I've spun it at Laguna Seca. I love that car. I love how it looks. But I especially love how it sounds. There's just a rawness inside. It's like right there, and you see the supercharger belt. It's like such a cool car. And anyway, I'm in it, and I'm like in traffic. So I'm letting traffic like roll out in front of me, and then I'm just stomping it until I hit traffic again. So it's like, what? But I just keep doing that, right? And it's like, I'm doing this for like 20 minutes. And I keep letting the traffic roll out like further and further and further. But like, the thing does 0 to 60 in first gear. So you don't even have to get out of first gear to do this. And all of a sudden I see lights behind me. I'm like, oh shit. And the cop pulls up next to me and he looks over and he's like, I'm in the driver's seat, and I'm looking over through his window, and he pulls up next to me and he like waves at me, and I roll the window down and I'm looking over at him. He's like, "No fucking way, dude." And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's me.
He's like, "Hold on, let me
Good or bad?
He's like, "Hold on, let me figure this out for you real quick." So at the time, like the New York sirens would go like this, and they would raise up, and they'd be like these big lit up sirens on the back of the patrol cars. So he turns the lights on and he starts like going side to side and basically shuts down. Like, and I'm just parked there. He shuts down the whole road, gets everyone to come to a complete stop, and then comes back up to me and he goes, "All right, give it about another 30 seconds. I'm like, "Okay, for what?" And he's like, "I'm trying to give you a quarter mile, buddy." And like, sure enough, like he just let traffic run out and then let me run like a full quarter on the FDR drive, and then pulled up next to me. And he was like, "Dude, this thing's so cool, man." He's like, "When'd you get it?" And I was like, "I'm just borrowing it for a few hours." And he's like, "Well," he's like, "I hope you don't get arrested, because I would." And then just like turned the lights off and kept driving.
That's fucking
and then
awesome.
yeah, but anyway, I ran 4 tanks of gas through it in 6 hours.
Shit.
No
Yeah, I
mileage
didn't know it.
limitations.
Like we were just on it the whole time. It's such an incredible car. So
Great,
yeah.
great.
Unfortunately, they're like so out of reach now. They're so expensive. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
Kick ass.
Did you write a good story on the review? Did you write a good story?
Oh yeah. I wrote a good story. But I probably wrote a better story when I spun it, because I spun it at Laguna Seca on turn 11 with the engineer in the car, and he was just yelling at me. He was yelling at me, both feet in, both feet in. And I didn't really know what he meant by both feet in, but I realized that the car, I was out of gear and I was rolling it backwards, and he didn't want me to backspin the engine.
Oh.
But I was clutched in, so I wasn't really but he was like both feet in, which I had both feet in, but I thought he meant like both feet on the brake. So I was like, and like that's all I remember is my conversation with him of like, as I'm like about to smash this like $200,000 supercar into the side. We ended up stopping 6 inches short of the wall. And the engineer got out, and I was like, "Do you want to ride back?" And he's like, "No, I'm going to walk." And he like jumped over the wall and walked back in, and I ran a cool down lap, came back in.
I think those fuckers are a little tail happy. My buddy that got one the first day he got it, he talked to me about like what car to get. He wanted to like build some crazy Mustang or something. He was on the fence between that and a GT, and I was like, dude, from an investment standpoint, he was talking about like the value. I'm like, a fucking GT, it's hard to beat the value, like the investment of that car. So he buys the fucker, calls me the first day, spun it out in a traffic circle, just doing like 20 miles an hour going through the traffic.
He blames
circle,
on the date
gave
code.
it a little bit of throttle, fucking looped that thing out, and almost piled it up on day one.
I mean, it's got nothing. It's got no traction control. It's got no nannies. There's nothing. It's just a raw
It's just a
car.
muscle
I mean,
car.
I feel like it's something that could exist in that moment only. That's it. Like they wouldn't like now. Like, so I don't know what your thoughts are on the new GT, but I feel like it loses the essence of like what the original GT was. Like that, the 2005 GT is just such a cool car. It's also my wife's favorite car, which is part of the reason I married her.
It's a grown man's car. I'll tell you that. It's a grown man's car. First car. I'm going to bow out because I think I've got too much information for the first car. So I'll let you guys have it. I mean,
It's a Volkswagen.
He danced all around it.
It's a Volkswagen, and I'm just going to hit it as it's a Volkswagen, but it's not the Volkswagen that he wanted. So it's like a 90s four-door Jetta.
It's a rabbit.
Silver.
It's a rabbit.
Yeah, I'm going
It's a
No,
rabbit.
no. First one was a four-door Golf.
Pretty good.
It was a Golf.
Was it silver?
It was no, it was black.
Ah, fuck.
It was black, and it was like the 2-liter model. But I then later swapped the bigger VR6 engine into it. Yeah.
Yeah, you got a taste, and he's like, I like the handling characteristics. I just need like.
Did you ever have a Corrado?
I didn't. I love Corrados, and I think they're like a really good looking car. But I don't really. I'm 6'8", so I never fit well into the Corrados or the Scirocco's. They were always a little tight for me. So the reason I bought my Coupe Quattro, which is the 2-door 90s Audi that I have, is because it looked like a Corrado to me. Which is like usually the other way around. Like most people look at Corrados as like the poor man's Audi, and I was like, no, that's like cool. The other way.
Brian, it's been fucking amazing, man. Dude. Sorry we kept you a little late.
Really cool, man. We appreciate the time.
I'm all good. As you guys have noticed, I can talk forever. So
it's been absolutely fucking awesome. I mean, we knew of you, but we didn't know you, and we feel like we've gotten to know you. We have to do this again. Completely different worlds, but I think we all
Venn diagram.
We all have a. I think
we're
a.
shitheads, so we fit right into the. We're shitheads, guys. We fit right.
I mean, you literally have a car doing a burnout in the background.
Yep, we do.
A 55 Chevy in the background. Yeah,
little turbo 55.
Sorry,
Chevy.
it's small on my window, but it looks like it. Try 5.
Yeah.
So,
well, dude, if you're ever out in our neck of the woods, you got to stop by.
Yeah, you need to come by.
You ever make it out to Chicagoland area?
Hey, where in Chicago are you guys?
We're just northern suburb. We're like, from the airport, from O'Hare, we're 40 minutes north.
Oh, cool. I'll give you a little. I actually scouted Chicago for Gymkhana a few years back. It unfortunately didn't work out, but I know Chicago. When you scout a city to film in, you become so much more aware of it because you go look at a bunch of places like people who live there have never been. And you look at weird things, like the amount of times I've walked back and forth over the industrial side of like the river because I wanted to try to jump the river. You know, it's like I know weird things like where the lowest points are at the river and like the weird topography of like where this street lines up to this street and I could build a ramp and cross over it.
Oh, and they got
Things like
drawbridges there too, so you got some great draw.
Oh yeah.
Dude, Lower Wacker Drive in Chicago. That's the one I've always wanted
Lower
to
Wacker's
do.
a play. That's Batman.
Yeah.
Killer.
So we scouted Lower Wacker pretty heavily. I didn't realize that Lower Wacker is actually like a big takeover spot now. Because I guess there's like I've seen a bunch of takeover videos coming out of Lower Wacker. But they put in a bunch of speed. They put in a bunch of speed bumps now on Wacker. So yeah, there's a whole section of like new speed bumps over there that's kind of annoying. So and then one of the other locations that I looked at, it didn't really work, but you know those mid-century modern apartment buildings, the round, like the spiral, the
corncob buildings.
Corn cobs. Yeah.
They're what the fuck is the name of them? They're fuck, I forget the name of them.
We're just talking about getting. They're. Have you looked at the like insides? You can get one for
Marina Towers.
Marina Towers.
Yeah. Marina Tower. Yeah, Marina Tower. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's actually kind of there's some of them that are like still original.
Yeah.
That are really cool. So this is completely on the side, but my wife and I are really into like original like mid-century era stuff. So we have like a very very original house, but we restored the whole house. So like my wife is like, we've literally bought toilet bowls out of houses in Milwaukee and had race teams deliver them to us at other racetracks because like my network is in racing and you're like hey, like can I have something dropped off at your guys' shop? Would you guys mind bringing it to me like next time you're at like, you know, Thermal or wherever? And they're like yeah sure. And then like they show up and they're like, bro, I didn't know I was bringing you a toilet bowl. And I'm
but
like,
it's hazelnut. It's hazelnut
on a vintage shitter in Milwaukee.
It's a very rare wall-mounted Kohler. Like put some respect on it. So
dude, that Marina Towers though, like me and Josh were just talking the other day, for like under 200 grand, occasionally you'll find an absolute mint survivor,
great Airbnb,
untouched.
Yeah, still all the green
like
shag.
a studio, but fuck, are they cool? We're like, dude, that would be bad at like make it fucking mint mid-century.
I think we should put the studio down there.
That'd be fucking killer.
You know, that's a great idea.
Yep.
Just that pays itself off because I can't believe they're that cheap.
I know.
Is it because Chicago just hasn't like had their mid-century moment?
Well, I don't think the building's that nice.
I think there's a lot of inventory there in the rest of the building. There's no amenities. Like it's very dated, like the rest of the building. The location's, I mean, fucking great.
Yeah, it's a good location.
It's not like the hot spot to live. You know, it's not like
no.
West Loop. It's kind of just it's not that sought after anymore.
Be great, great studio. Get the river as a backdrop.
Yeah,
and we can rent it out for an Airbnb.
Fuck yeah,
we have to do it.
See, there you go. That works really good. Yeah, and then also rent it out for filming because if it's all original like that, you know, that stuff works great. So, yeah. Anyway, you guys got any other questions? I got a few more minutes, so if you got any more,
if you've got more time, absolutely.
We'll just go all night, man.
I wanted to. I made a little mental note when you were talking about Ken telling you that he had a $28,000 bill, right? And holy shit, there's 10 million unique visitors. Was that the moment that you understood that shift from print is happening now and it's happening that fast, or what are you thinking? Because 0 to 60 is your baby, right? 0 to 60 is what you're putting everything into. That's print media. And then you're hearing 10 million. I don't know what 0 to 60's readership was or distribute
100 to 150,000 at max.
That's a little different than 10 million.
Which was, I mean, it didn't really compute because the number was so big. It almost seemed like it might have been a mistake, right? And I don't think we really realized how real it was until we started traveling. It wasn't until you went to Argentina and there's, a line 3 hours long waiting to get Ken's autograph. And, or we go down to Mexico and he's not even on the top level at this point. We're down there for PWRC. And he's got a bigger line than Loeb, who's the champion at the time, right? And that's when you start to realize, how real those numbers are. So that for sure was a moment, but you know, I don't think it was a light switch to go print is over. Things didn't really disappear yet, right? I mean,
Right.
if you think about it, like,
Still there.
we moved from VHS to DVD, but like it wasn't like things had really had the amount of shift that they do now. I mean, now it's crazy. There'll be entire technologies that are just gone 5 years later, right? That just aren't a thing anymore. I mean, we started this conversation about forums, and it's like, forums are kind of a forgotten space, and now we all just belong to Facebook groups where someone asks the same exact question every day.
Thanks,
So,
photo bucket. What was Photo Bucket really thinking?
I actually think that Photo Bucket ruined forums.
Yeah,
Because I think the
100%
reason
did.
I think the reason why Facebook worked was because you could upload photos for free. And the fact that all the forums wouldn't allow, photo hosting, and then all of a sudden all the photos disappeared and it made the forums not as, interesting, and it kind of ruined the whole space.
overnight.
So
Overnight.
it was,
It was a lot of work. You got to upload it to one site, then copy the link, and then it never worked.
Yeah.
Do you guys
I
still
still
get
keep getting threatening emails. They're going to cancel
every
my
fucking
account.
day?
Yeah.
Like, cancel the fucking account already, dude. Cancel
Nobody's
the account.
how are they? I can't believe they're still in fucking business.
Jesus.
Nobody uses them.
I think it's just an auto send
Yeah.
every 3 days.
Yeah. Sorry.
yeah.
Derailed.
But yeah, so I don't know if that, like I said, I don't know that there was a particular light switch moment to say, oh yeah, this has happened. Instead, it was it was well aware that print was going through a difficult time. I worked in New York City, and there were so many print or publishing companies near me. So many of my friends were like losing jobs, at a flip of a switch. Like FHM got killed, and I don't think any of us thought that those like all what they would call the lad mags were going to go away. I mean, they were such a strength in the early 2000s. I mean,
Maxim was
FHM,
yeah.
good
all
magazine.
of those magazines were crushing. I mean,
Yeah.
those magazines, say what you will about them now, but like that, they made me love the art form of a magazine, and they were very well done. Right, Stuff, Maxim,
They were good.
FHM. They were very well done in terms of like, even if you remove like the content, just the format of them were really good.
That was
and
a
then they all
magazine that
disappeared.
could take you from front to back.
Yeah.
Like it was, they were taking you on a journey. They're like, oh, we're gonna give you a little sneak peek of this, blah blah, and you're
None of those reinvented themselves on Instagram, on social media.
No, I don't think so. And I'll tell you why though, because I think what those created so well was an environment. Like, there was this saying that we used to have in the magazine business, which was like, don't create a single entry page. Meaning, like, if you open it up and there's only one thing to bring you in and that doesn't appeal to you, you're going to turn the page. Like, every single page for Maxim was multiple entries. Like, they would have like little footnotes in the corner that would be like additional information or sidebars or jokes or explainers. And like that, I mean, it was almost like an ADHD sort of, directed audience, but it made you be able to reread it multiple times because it felt like you kept missing something. You could read a feature and then go back and read all the sidebars and read all the pieces, or do it the other way, read the sidebars and get interested in the features. And I think that those magazines created a great, space for that. And it's funny because the joke for our dad's generation was, I read Playboy for the articles. And then like Maxim really became that.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
they had hot girls in it, which helped. But like, be honest, like I think a lot of people read Maxim for the articles. Like, it was there was that you could go get naked pics of girls. You didn't need the magazine for that. Like, the magazine was all those other pieces. Anyway, all those people started losing their jobs, and like that was more than a canary in the coal mine, because you're like, they're doing a really good job at this. Like, they're killing
at a broader
it, and
scope.
they're just and they're the ones losing it first. And so that was certainly aware. But I don't think I definitely didn't see social media as the way forward, and the blog system felt limited and didn't feel like it was creating the same environment. And the video space seemed too expensive at the time. So that was like I didn't really understand like where automotive was going to go live. So, when we played it right and it worked out well for us. But I mean, you look, there was a lot of people that came before us that I just think were not the right time, right? Like the entire drive company, all of the different things that were there
Yeah.
from Chris Harris's show to Matt Farah's show to Spinelli's show, like those were all good, but they were just too early, right? Like they had missed sort of that the window. And even Freiberger like had his internet stuff and the stuff he did with Rice Boy and everyone else earlier on, like Nads, like we just happened to like find the right window, because I think there was a period of time where people were still kind of holding on to print even after the 2008 financial crisis and everything else. There was still this like authority around print, and everything else was treated like it wasn't real, right? I mean, I saw something today where someone said the internet's not real, and it made me laugh because we used to all say that 15 years ago, and then the internet became real,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
like it, and like it did, like it kind of became real. It became this thing that had way more effect than we ever thought it would, not just in cars, but in culture and in life and politics and everything. The internet became a really, really big player. But I think 15 years ago, we looked at the internet as like this thing that wasn't real. So it was like hard to imagine that like print was going to entirely go away. But it was definitely, I mean, I knew that it was changing for sure.
As
So,
as
but
much as much as the Matrix keeps glitching, I'm starting to think that internet is more real than what we live every day. Because the internet's what's showing you what's happening, and what we're living is a fucking like it's glitching out like crazy. The amount of
that's
it's shit
it's
is
scary
nuts.
to think about. It's scary to think about that if the Matrix came out today, you'd be like, this feels too on the nose. Where like when it came out, you're like, that's a crazy thought.
That's
And now you're like,
far-fetched.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you're like, nope.
We
Now
talk
all
about we
daily
probably
tense.
have five, well, at minimum five major instances
A day.
a day where it's like this can't be happening. Obviously, everybody's got the thing of like, oh, I searched this and I talked about this, but it's getting to the point now where it's a thought, and you're about to search something, right? And it's something completely random that nobody else in the entire world would search these things because we're fucked up search histories.
Yeah.
And when I put the one letter like a D, right? And it tells me the whole
dick pics
the
comes
whole,
up.
no, I'm something like
Oh, that's not what you're.
Donald Trump slept or whatever. Something like it fills out the
Right.
whole thing, and it's like it can't be coincidence. It happens too many times of a thought that comes in, and
Some crazy shit, dude.
commercials on TV of just and it's something that was not spoken about or something. It's crazy. I don't know if you ever have any of those moments.
I have them all the time. I literally had one yesterday where I was talking about something rather obscure, and then all of a sudden Marketplace was trying to sell it to me. And I'm like, what's the chances
That's a
of
hard,
this?
yeah,
Like,
that's a hard one to
they
get.
gotta be listening. They gotta be listening. But there's a book called Stolen Focus, and it's all about like how the social media has built a profile on you that is way more intense than you could ever imagine it is, and that it really understands you better than you can, because you tell yourself a story of who you are, but the data actually tells the story of what you do. And it knows everything from, but it knows more than you think it knows. Like you're like, yeah, I went to the gym 4 times this week. But like, no, you actually went 3 because it can see on the GPS that you weren't there on Wednesday. Like it knows so much more than you think it knows. It also knows like right now it knows that we're talking because Zoom is somehow selling this information to someone else. But
Yeah.
if we were together, right? The GPS would be like, these 4 guys have been sitting together for 2+ hours. They probably know each other. Oh, look, they have shared friends on Instagram. Oh, they actually are looking at the same type of stuff on Marketplace. Like, they have this. And then all of a sudden it's going to start going, well, I don't know, Josh likes this, maybe Scott will like this too. And like the level to which it knows us is scary, and they refer to that as surveillance marketing. And like the big conversation is like, should we ban surveillance marketing? Because surveillance marketing is the ability for like it to know exactly what you want. Because it is basically just building, it's almost in some ways, and not that it's AI, but it's basically building a large language model on everything you do. Did you slow down a little bit when you saw that, like, that Mercury F100? Because, like, man, it'd be kind of cool. Like, a Ford F100 is cool, but the Mercury one, well, twice is kind of cool.
Unibody?
You didn't like it. You just kept scrolling. But it knows that slight slowdown in the scroll was because that caught your eye. Like,
but the problem,
it compiles all of this information.
It also knows. It also knows when your wife is sitting next to you, and it'll fuck with you on stuff like that. It's like, oh, your wife's around. What about this stuff? And then when you're by yourself, it's like, hey, I know your wife's not around. So what about this?
Let's clean up this social media feed a little bit, Mike.
It's like, come on, quit fucking with me.
Button.
Yeah. No, because it's like, yeah. So yeah, but no, it's definitely scary. That being said, I've grown to sort of hate the algorithm. The algorithm obviously was a very valuable part of a lot of the stuff I did in my life, but I've grown to hate it, except on Marketplace. Because like the Facebook Marketplace algorithm,
I'm with you.
If for some reason that got erased, I don't know if I would even exist anymore. I mean, it is just such a part of me. Like I had built that brick by brick, so many bad decisions and purchases layered on top of each other.
Channel
like
sure shit boxes right to you.
Right now, I'm in a van kick right now.
All right, I support that.
Oh, dude, not the vans you're thinking.
No, the fucking van, the quality content that it puts in front of me, epic. I mean, I haven't found anything that's
quality.
Not,
Previa?
No,
content?
I mean the Previa is a joke, but I'm trying to find
whoa. The Previa is not a joke. Hold on. The Previa is a supercharged mid-engined van.
Stop. Yes, dude, I've brought that up. I've made a case for it, like on this podcast.
From aero to weight displacement.
But the reality is,
it's rear-wheel drive, mid-engine,
they do
with a
manual.
Supercharger. That's basically a Ford GT.
Yeah, you can fit the whole fucking
It's
family.
basically a Ford GT.
You can't even put a fucking duffel bag in a Ford GT, but that you put the whole
Probably
family.
got better aerodynamics.
By the way, I have long talked about this. I want to start a Previa racing series.
That'd be great.
Just Previas. It's like a spec series of Previas. So hold on, here's the concept. It's endurance racing, and the entire team has to ride along. So you keep like your spare tires and your jack and your tools in the Previa with you.
That would be pretty
so when
good.
You pit, you have to pull everything out. No fuel because that's probably extra. So maybe on the outside, but whatever. Yeah.
We are in. We are 100%
but like,
I could get
imagine that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to indoctrinate everybody on this idea. So
I don't think you need to do anything to a Previa. They just run forever.
It'll do like 100,000 miles like without even an oil change.
100.
We've got to make MasterCard. We've got to make MasterCard delivery driver that's been coming here for 15 years in the same Previa.
980. It's got 980,000 miles on it.
Well, we were sitting out in front of the shop.
Legit.
Josh is having a cigarette one day. We're sitting out in front of the shop and we're talking about it. So again, Matrix situation. And I'm telling him because I'm always talking about Previas. Lo and behold, what shows up? Fucking McMasterCard delivery. Dude in the Previa. So I'm like, dude, ask him how many miles are on it. You asked him.
I was like, hey, how many miles?
Just under 1 million.
And it didn't even phase him. He's like, 980.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Wow. He's like, yep, great truck. I mean, the wheel wells are starting to rust out and stuff like that, but 980,000 miles. Oh, he said stock transmission and stock motor.
Yeah,
he's replaced a few other some things, but stock motor and trans.
To bring it back about Marketplace, how they monitor and how they adapt to the because I'm looking for the early '70s Econoline Shorty, right, and the stuff they put out there, unbelievable, really. I mean nationwide because I bounce around I'll jump to L.A. 500-mile radius, Phoenix, Houston. I cover the United States, but they'll put suggestions in front of you of really good stuff. I appreciate it. That's the one thing that I'm perfectly fine with them looking at all my search history.
Yeah. Finding those.
No, it's a dangerous place. I mean, I have thrown so much information into that hopper, and it just keeps sending me and showing me stuff. And like, it's so good. Like, I got I told everyone I wasn't gonna actually admit that I bought this because then the game clock starts, and like then people expect me to build it. But I bought a Jaguar E-Type.
I love E-Types, man.
I bought an
list.
E-Type. I bought an E-Type for super cheap because it showed me an ad for some lowrider parts, and in the background, I had been searching E-types, but in the background was an E-type like under a car cover, and like Marketplace could just take the silhouette and be like, yeah, he's into this. And I just sent the guy a note and said, hey, is the E-type in the background? You know, is the car in the background for sale? And he said, I'm selling the axle out of it. You know, the inboard rear brake axle. They run them on bombs, like lowrider bombs. He's like, so you could just give me the price of like what I'm selling the axle for. You could take the whole damn car, and like walked out of there with an E-type for a couple $1,000, which was pretty chill.
Yeah, that's a pretty good deal.
but realized like I had been looking at E-types for like 2 or 3 months, and it delivered me something that wasn't even listed as an E-type ad. Like didn't say Jaguar in the ad. Like it was just a picture of an E-type in a silhouette in the background, and it knew that well enough. And for that, you know, I welcome our AI overlords. If I can get cheap, if I can get cheap E-types, it might be worth the destruction of society for it. I'm not sure. Maybe we'll see how it all pans out.
Yeah, they got to slide one of those my way.
We're gonna get it done before society falls.
Nah, yeah, you know, maybe. So before the Grand Theft Auto comes out. So, but yeah.
Brian,
Anyway, yeah.
It's been awesome,
guys,
man.
Hey, this has been a lot of fun. Next time I'm in Chicago, I'll definitely come see you guys. Or next time you guys are in California, I'll be launching my own podcast in like a month from now. So you guys can come join. You guys can come join me.
What's the name of the podcast going to be? You got it figured out already?
It's called Very Vehicular. Okay. So Very Vehicular, a Scotto podcast, and yeah, it's kind of this. The big joke at Hoonigan was that I always wanted to do a podcast, but there was never enough time to do it. I did a small one while I was on. We did a small one with Spotify for like a few episodes, but the idea for this one is to basically be the proving ground for a couple concepts I want to do that are more like a concept-driven show. Like you guys would come on as like part of like a. I don't want to say game show, but it kind of has that format of like, all right, hey, we're all here to solve this today, like and bring different people in to kind of do that. So, you know, just try to change it up, do something a little different. So yeah, so that'll be something I'll be eventually getting done in June. I'm actually, once I'm off the phone with you guys, I get to go back to my garage and finish running all my XLR cables. So
yes. Well, yeah, we'd love to make it something happen. We're out there probably about 3 or 4 times a year. Well, good luck on it, and let's stay in contact.
Yeah, thanks, dude. This has been a blast.
Sounds good, guys. It's been a great chat.
Appreciate it.
Later.
Thank you.
Whiskey review. This is the new Calumet.
It's been a while since we've done a whiskey review.
It has.
Yeah,
we've actually do a good bit of them.
Yeah,
it's just you're not here.
Yeah, so I'm interested to hear if I was at a pickleball tournament or Miata Spec Race.
I'm gonna let you.
Where I was at.
I'm gonna let you listen to. We told the truth finally.
Busy little beaver.
We finally told the truth on what's been going on with Phil.
But hey, it's lucrative little side hustle.
If you're making money, you're making money. Yeah. What if, I
will never fault somebody for hustling.
And if you're doing it with your daughter too, that's the thing.
Yeah, you're teaching her, how to run a business. It's no big deal.
There's good. I didn't know that fucking Mall of America was the place to get the best deals on the newest American Girl drops. But
if you're gonna do it, that's the place.
Get the rare ones. I guess that's what brings the money.
Calumet 7 year
17.
Coincidentally, we just gave away all my daughter's American Girl.
I know. We talked about it, and they brought a lot of money, and it spurred into business. Are you serious?
That's
we literally came up with a whole concept.
We didn't sell any. We're giving away. We're redoing the basement.
Sold them.
Yeah.
So we gave away a bunch of stuff. But
you'll have to listen because we figured that you guys found a way of selling these secondhand. You were getting drops, rare limited edition drops, and then moving them for big money. But you would catch them. I think he was going to Mall of America in Minneapolis.
Yes,
because they were doing drops, and you would be first on site.
Yes, they were doing drops,
and then turn them. You'd flip them on market.
But it all spurred from you were cleaning out you got rid of some OG American Girl dolls, and turns out they brought some big money, which was like, oh, actually,
This
this is
fucking Matrix.
yes,
We just gave it away.
100%.
We have to work on that.
All right, Calumet.
Calumet. This is their green label, which is a blend.
disappoints.
It's a blend. This year is a 17-year-old and a 7-year-old blend. Low proof, 86 proof. Great, as you can tell. Great drinker.
Yeah. Goes down.
Great flavor. No burn. Drink away. Not an expensive bottle if you can find it.
I would say anything Calumet that's on the shelf, buy it. Buy it all. I would encourage everybody to get the lineup.
If you can't get Weller Special Reserve and you want good, drinkable, tasty
Is it the same price
whiskey,
point? I thought this was like $60-$70.
this is going to be
vary.
about 60, but you're not going to find Special Reserve outside of Chicago for less
I'm
than
actually shocked
80.
that has the distribution it has and sits on the shelves the way it does.
It's a great drinker.
Because you would think it's got,
Doesn't have the notoriety.
but doesn't have it. For some reason, I don't know why. Because
17
it's one of the
7
very
year.
few things that has some killer age statements.
Yeah.
On. I mean, the blend, 17-year with a 7-year.
I mean, you blend those
7 year by
together, it's
itself
in
is-
between the two. Yeah, between 17 and 7 right there if you put them both together.
You do the math.
Yeah.
I don't know where to rate it. The rating system it's tough because I got to find that the benchmark. Like where,
I think we just said if you can find
buy
that,
it,
I would get it.
100%.
I would get
Yeah.
it. This year we're not doing numbers.
all right,
Fuck
I'm
that.
cool with it.
Numbers is so 2024.
Let's just we'll go. It's a buy it, no buy it. That's
Yep. That's 100% a buy it.
Do you like this or the blue label better?
I think the blue's a 10-year, right? It's
No, the
10-year?
blue is the other mix of.
I don't remember, honestly.
Do we have one floating around?
I don't see one
I
back
think it's
there.
out in the other, sitting on the other bar.
I didn't think the blue was a mix. I thought it was just a straight age statement. I like this one better than I liked the last one, which was a 10 and a 7. I think it was a 10 and a 7, or a 15 and a something. I don't remember.
Sometimes
this one's actually a little bit better. They get a little with that lower proof. Sometimes they go a little bland.
That's what. But the low proof is kind of nice for these early in the week podcasts.
It is. That's why you have multiple whiskeys, because there's times that you want a little heat and there's times when you don't. This is a great.
Buy the whole collection.
This is actually one that would be a summertime out in the middle of the day. Like if you want to have, we always
Too
talk.
fucked up.
Yeah, and you're like, oh man, if I don't feel like whiskey, it's not. But that right there, especially with some ice, you could drink on that and be fine. Hey,
Great episode.
awesome episode. Thanks everybody for listening.
We'll see. We'll see you again next week.
Did you get the drops?
I did not get there. We got there too late, apparently.
All right, so don't go to the website then. That we
I have
gave.
my own website now.
Yeah, you got your own.
What did
Yeah.
we say the website was?
Well, you're just gonna listen to here. It's a great name for a website. That was your name.
Did I drop it?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
You guys.
Oilandwhiskey.com though, if you're searching for stuff, apparel, shirts, t-shirts, OW shirts, available now if they're not sold out. See you again next week.